All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Pete Berube. I'm the chairperson of the Millis Finance Committee. Tonight is 6 April, and I will call to order our meeting for tonight. We have, as usual, a pretty busy agenda with as we lead up to the annual town meeting to be held on the 2nd of May. I'll ask the committee members to introduce themselves, please.
Joyce Boyardi.
Sarah Reyes.
John Stedman.
Jim Borgman.
Peter Underhill.
Kathy McInnes.
John Lohr.
Jody Garson.
Okay, and I'm just gonna, first, I guess I'll welcome back an esteemed colleague, kind of a celebrity amongst us, and that is Deirdre Gilmore is returning to us to help us out as our administrative support, and we're ecstatic to have her back. In addition to that, I just want to make sure, because Deirdre, her primary function tonight, certainly, and she does a lot of work for us, but primary function tonight, and as most meeting nights, is to take our meeting minutes. So I just want to make sure that you can hear us, and if you could give us the thumbs up or thumbs down.
I can hear you.
No, we can hear you.
Yes, but please speak into the mic.
Yep. So speaking into the mic literally means like this, into the mic. So please, if you're going to come up to speak to the finance committee, or if you're going to make a comment, just wait your turn and grab the mic, and then that way we'll ensure that Deirdre can hear us. Okay? Great. Okay. Without further delay, we're going to ask Mr. McKay to come forward. He's going to present the tree wardens program, because tree warden couldn't be with us, and we anticipate he won't be able to for some of our next scheduled meetings. So, Mr. McKay, thank you for helping us out.
Thank you. So this is an annual item that we've asked for the past, I think this might be the 5th or 6th town meeting that we've asked for these funds to take down dead trees throughout the town of Millis. And this year the general concern will be on the Ridge Street, Middlesex, Baltimore, and Village Street, mainly all on Route 115. And we're talking pretty much from the Holliston town line almost to the Norfolk town line. So we are requesting a $50,000 town meeting appropriation. And we do have money left over from the November town meeting, so we will use all that with this amount. The daily cost, it's $7,500 for this machine. And I don't know if any of you have seen this machine. It comes in, it's just it grabs onto the bottom of the tree, it cuts it in half, it lowers it down, they chop it up. So we can take down multiple trees in one day. So I'd say in one day, it takes down 25 to 30 trees. And these are for taking down trees. This isn't for trimming so these are dead trees that we're going to take out of the way. We are looking at, there are still, the DPW has a backlog of trees, of dead trees that residents have called in that this machine cannot get into. So we will also incorporate some of those funds, because already the tree budget in the DPW line item budget is in deficit of almost $7,000. So we will use some of those funds. And we are going to look at hopefully taking down some of the stumps that have been left off because when this tree comes, it's so far he can get and cut it, and the stumps are left. And that's another cost to have another company come back in, which is still under contract, to remove some of the stumps. So we are looking at, there's a bunch on Himmelfarb, the ones that are still pretty much out in the roadway. I think we all know where they are. We've had many discussions on the corner of Ridge Street, all around Okra Farm. There's a whole bunch that we took down, and they're out in the street, close to the street, and there's a bunch on Himmelfarb Street that we'd look at.
Okay. Would you do us a favor and summarize for us the trees that are more or less eligible to be done by the town versus those that should be done by the utility, by pole-mounted utilities?
So most of the work that you've seen in the past 3 months, maybe 2-3 months, is all the Eversource. They do all the trimming of any lines, any of their lines. They'll come and they'll clear up to the bottom of the line itself. A lot of times they do a lot of hacking with them. We have a very good relationship with the Eversource tree warden and the arborist. He's taken down many, many trees that were not in their purview, but they've helped us out because they would affect, if they're knocked over, would knock a pole or a line down. The town has a right up from, if there's no sidewalk, usually it goes from the curb, street, maybe 5 to 10 feet in from the curb if there's no sidewalk. If there's a sidewalk, unless there's a large taking there, it's usually anything right in back of the sidewalk is up to the homeowner to take care of. And that's in trimming. If somebody else's property, if it's hanging over somebody's property, that person that owns that house has a right to trim that hanging over their property, even if it's not their tree. But we've caught up a lot. I mean, we've taken down hundreds and hundreds of trees. We do have a count usually at every time we take the group down. We log in where the tree came from, and
So to clarify, the utility are typically responsible for trimming of branches up to and near the utility lines.
Utility lines.
But if it means dropping a tree because there's something way up, typically that would be the responsibility of the town. And in some cases, the utility tree warden has helped us out by doing that. But they're not necessarily responsible for taking trees down.
they won't take the tree down. They'll just whatever in their way. If the tree is interfering with their line and it's a dead tree that could fall over, they will take the whole tree down. Yes.
Okay.
With our request through the tree warden.
Okay. And then similarly on stump grinding, because that's, it's an added cost. I don't know what the cost is per, diameter of a tree or however it gets billed. But would you just characterize what is the priority there? Those that are close to the road and could pose an accident, hazard if somebody went off the road and, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but.
Nope, I mean, they're probably more dangerous than the dead tree. With the tree, the stump being left it's a liability that we take, but it's just the cost of it, so that's why we will go back out and hopefully take down the ones that are closest to the road that won't happen. We do pay per day, and it's like $550 to $650 a day we pay, not per stump, but, for the whole day.
Okay.
It's under our contract. But usually, those funds go right away to take care of taking down the dead trees. And then when that's gone, that's been, I mean, we do take, if it's on our property, which is fair, well, everything's on our property, but if it's like in the cemetery, we will grind them all down because of appearances and, the need of the cemetery. But most of them in the roads, it's like every 5-10 years when we get a good year that we're not taking trees down, we'll go out and start attacking these. But we do have the funds that were left over from the November town meeting, and with this $50,000, we should be able to take care of some of the needs that the residents have asked. I mean, there are a couple on Ridge Street that, they need to be taken down
Okay.
or removed.
I'll just add one more comment and then
Yep.
I'll open it up for everybody. And that is, I heard you say that, 50,000 won't cover all of the needs of the town, nor will any amount of capital that we put towards roads. I would like for you to comment that whether or not we've been making adequate investment in tree removal over those years.
I think since we first came up, myself and the tree warden proposed this, in the past 5 years, we've done a complete flip on this. I mean, we were doing nothing, and we've done 100%, working with Eversource in this. The calls have not, we usually get a call, we're getting calls every day about dead trees. And of course, we still do get calls about dead trees, but nothing compared to what we have. So I would think that, like with roads, like you said, the investment that Millis residents have put to this is, they're getting their payback on this, 100-fold.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to add on one more.
No.
And would you say that we could possibly, I mean, I know we can't predict diseases in the trees and, different vectors that come along and harm the trees. We can't necessarily predict those. But would you say that $50,000 a year, we could possibly anticipate to see that go down in out years? Or do you think that's the straight line? it should be funded at $50,000 a year.
Are you probably reading my mind? That was going to be part of my first part of my presentation, that we're getting to a point where, you know, we may not be able, not every town meeting, because this has gone to every town meeting, if you remember. And we've gone from spring to fall town meeting asking for these funds. So yes, I do see that, and like you say, unless there's another disease comes through and something like that. But for the work that we've done, I do see that dropping soon.
Okay, great. The reason I ask is because I've been an advocate for the town investing in sidewalks, and I personally view there being more hazard to our pedestrians and bikers and drivers, potentially for lack of sidewalks in the town. I support this, but like all things, we can't support everything that comes forth.
Yep.
And so I think we're approaching maybe some of the limits of support, or just the point where we balance and we put resources to something else in the future. So that's why I asked my question. And so, Mr. Lohr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What kind of, and you kind of alluded to it, percentage of trees, dead trees, or trees that need removal have been completed? Are you, like, out of all the dead trees or trees that are on the list, are you at 50% or 60%? And then how do you kind of tier that out over time? Because trees that might be healthy now might be getting ill in future years.
So that's up to the tree warden makes that, you know, decision. That's his part of this. I'm not an arborist, but he is. So that I would say we've taken down, and again, I know we've taken down 500 plus trees.
Wow.
We have.
Yeah.
Eversource on our part with our, have taken down over 200 and something trees. And I'm saying that's in the past 4 to 5 years. And percentage-wise of what is still dead out there, I don't know that, because until they stop blooming this year, we were told, the Eversource arborist told us that, that we were looking for another type of beetle that was going to come after the ashes now. And Millis was a big, you know, it was going to happen to us, you know, within this year. And he thinks that this blooming season, we're going to see that half of them aren't going to bloom. Not half of them, but whatever his percentage of.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Stedman, thank you.
Mr. McKay, how much money is left over from the November warrant?
30, let's say 31,000, but it's either 31 or 32, and that was 50. What we did is, when we went last year, the truck, there's only one truck, one company that actually does this type of work that we're contracted with, and we were too late. We had used him from the Springtown meeting, and then by the time the November town meeting, he had already booked himself all the way up.
So then, if I understand that,
There'd be $80,000.
we would have $81,000.
Correct.
Some of which you're going to use in the last 2 months of this year.
Well, we can, if we will use it, but, you know,
little.
that's one of those things, those articles that we can carry it over from year to year.
Sure, okay, I understand. Second, kind of putting on my Conservation Commission hat, tell me what you mean when you say stump removal.
So we grind the stumps down,
Ground down
ground
to
them
level?
down to
Okay,
level ground.
no disturbance of
No,
the
no,
ground?
No, we won't pull them out of the ground, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Mr. McKay?
Thank
Okay,
you.
very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Barry. Mr. Barry is going to present the Capital Planning Committee's report. Hi, John.
Good evening, everyone. Get this close enough there. All right, well, it's good to see you all again. It's our sort of semi-annual get-together with the Capital Planning Committee. So hopefully everybody got the report we sent out a few days ago. We did make one small edit to this. I don't know, Pete, if you were able to send the that adjusted version. It's a very minor edit, so it's not.
I can't confirm which one's in front of us right now.
Okay. Yeah, the final document will have one small correction to it, but it's kind of immaterial, so don't worry about it. So just to kind of remind you briefly of what the Capital Planning Committee does. So we've been around for about 5 years, and we've been charged with sort of two jobs. One is to compile a inventory of all the capital needs of the town going out as far as we can plausibly see them. So we've worked very hard with all the different departments in town to get as good a list as we can of everything we think the town needs for the foreseeable future here. And actually, that's the list that's on the kind of the back page, which is this table here. There's a much more detailed version of this that we've got, and it's totaling about $78 million of items at this point. So pretty much every year it goes up. So don't get too used to that number, because new things will come up as we go. As hard as we've tried to get a complete list, new things always find their way onto the list. So that's job one, is making sure we've got a good comprehensive list. Job two is every year, as the departments submit capital requests, we're tasked with trying to assess those and prioritize them as best we can per a set of criteria that we've established, and try to sort of rank order them to some degree so that we can provide that information to the Finance Committee, the Select Board, and other interested parties in the town to help you all make better decisions as you go through your process. So, our job is not to recommend funding for items. We're not there to recommend sources of funding. We're just there to try to provide information to help other people make decisions. So to get to this year's report specifically, there were 12 items that we considered across the different departments. And 5 of them we ended up ranking as the highest priorities. So those were a public safety radio backup power generators, public safety radio console update, some sidewalk design and repair, road repair, a DPW pickup truck for the DPW with a plow, and then servers for the school, for the middle high school, some computer servers that needed replacement. Those were the highest priorities. There were 4 priorities that were, and actually those all totaled about $464,000 per the estimates that the different departments gave us. The medium priorities were 2 skid steers, and we'll get to that in a moment. One for the DPW, one for the school. New lighting system for the library, a replacement of the existing system, and then a pickup truck with a plow and other attachments for the school as well. I will say, and actually just to finish the list, the lower priorities on our list, where there were 3. One was a replacement of a tractor that the school currently has. The second was a message board for the DPW. And then the third was around the soundproofing for the pickleball court, which I know that's been quite a hot topic over the last several months. So while we, per our criteria that came through as a low priority, we certainly acknowledge that's an important issue that's been raised across, for the residents who live near there. And I understand that some funding's been found to deal with that one. So that's good. I'd say this, and Mr. Berube can I think would agree with this statement. I'd say this go-around was one of the most challenging ones we've had as we've done this, because we really started to get to a point where, and I think that's in a good way, because I think we're finally getting to a point where we're starting to sort of see how different departments kind of overlap with each other in different ways, and where there might be some synergies at times to do different things. And I think that's part of the original hope for what our committee could help to do, is to sort of help to integrate some of the different departments. I don't mean that necessarily, physically, like they're actually going to be, combined together in any way, but just to be, have better visibility into how different departments are working, and see if we can help them to work together as effectively as possible. So specifically, between the school and the DPW, there were several pieces of equipment that did similar things. They each had their own needs, but for example, as I said, there was 2 skid steers, there was 2 pickup trucks, there was a tractor. We spent a lot of time talking with the DPW in the school about these items. Mr. McKay, if he's still here, nope, he's gone. He spent a lot of time with us kind of going through them as well. I think we got to a place where, while I think the school and the DPW have been working very well together on snow removal and that sort of thing for many, many years, I think we were able to help further that relationship, and hopefully we'll continue to help further that along, so we can really be thinking more holistically across the town for equipment needs, and see if we can figure out better ways to be kind of utilizing these kinds of things across different departments And that's not just for the DPW and the school. That could cut across a lot of different departments in town. A couple other just points I'll make, and then I'll take any questions. We do note there are some larger cost items that are out there on the horizon, which I'm sure you folks are familiar with. Two in particular are the new senior center. So I know that there have been a couple of alternatives that are being worked on for potential senior center options. We do note that we did update our big list to reflect kind of the midpoint of those estimates. I think there's 3 different estimates. We sort of picked a number in the middle to add to our overall capital planning list. We had a placeholder in there before, but we've updated it given the new information we got in there. And then the second large item out there on the horizon is for the renovations to the middle high school. And we understand the school has just embarked on a process with the state. I forget the name of the department there, but to sort of assess, a feasibility study and all that sort of thing for how this might play out. I will say, while we do have many capital items related to sort of repairs around the school in our master plan, they'll almost certainly need to be updated as that thing kind of comes to fruition over the next months here. So don't be surprised if we see some adjustments to the list once that becomes a little more well-known over time. So I'll pause there, and I'm happy to take questions. Or Mr. Berube, I don't know if you want to add anything from Pete is a very active member of the committee and adds a lot of great insights, so.
Not everybody
Pass it
agrees
to
with
you.
that. I'll just amplify a little bit what John said, and then certainly I'll contribute when there's questions. There was a lot of good discussion on kind of the synchronization of efforts, and you've heard me, I'll say it here, I think, elimination of stovepipes where sometimes, we don't do a good job of looking across departments or across functions in the town. And we pushed that in the realm of capital, because the scope of this committee is capital. It's not operating budgets. It's not day-to-day, operations. But hopefully that catches on, and we also tried to do that, as many of you know. We did that during our tri-board meeting back in January, I think. We at least talked about that. So I'm hoping that it catches on, and I think that there's certainly room. I mean, one of the issues that one of the specifics that John talked about was the skid steer that 2 of the departments requested. And we really looked at it from the sense of course you can use 2, and 2 would be good, but can you find a way that we could purchase 1 and make it work? And there are times when, of course, both departments would like to be using them at the same time, but could they find a way to complete both of their responsibilities adequately as the town requires, for public safety, with only 1. And I'm hoping that we can continue that effort. I don't think we got there this year, and that's okay. I'm hoping that, an integrated priority, a snow removal plan that has the priorities of the town. For instance, the fire station always needs to be cleared out. Now, granted, they take care of a lot of their own snow removal needs, but the pump stations need to be cleared. The police station needs to be cleared. The schools need to be cleared. There's other critical functions that should be priority 1, and then down from there. And of course, the roads need to be part of that too. So I'm hoping that the owners of the equipment can keep going with their efforts after the snow removal season. And it may take us some time to where that equipment list for snow removal is maybe 1 equipment list, and it's the most efficient use of capital resources. And there are other things on here. That certainly is the prime example, I would say, for where we think the departments can do a better job, or the entities can do a better job of synchronizing their requests. So without covering too much that John has already covered, I think I'll just turn it over for any questions. And Ellen, if you're welcome to come on up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm just going to state the obvious, because That's what I do. The skid steer and the trucks and this overlap thing that's been talked about for a bit. And I know that there are conversations going on right now in real time about just what you said, Mr. Chairman, about the schools and the town sharing resources and maybe even personnel and getting a real holistic, with a W, approach to maintaining the town. Now, here's my question. If we give the skid steer to if we continue to treat them as separate, right? So this one gets a skid steer, this one gets a skid, this one gets a truck, this one gets a truck. Do you think it helps the conversation? Do you know what I'm saying? Do you think that if they continue to be allowed to operate sort of in silos, does it help the ultimate goal? You know what I'm saying? Without me saying,
Well, I'll try to answer the question.
Okay.
I don't think it does, if I understand your question. I think it would be great if we could get to a point where, this is my personal opinion, and I don't speak for anybody here, it's just I'm answering your question, and that is, my personal opinion is that the core function of the school is to educate. The core function of the town is to provide services, required services.
Yes.
Snow removal, I think. Now, there are many, many details before any change would ever have to be
Yes.
made that would have to be worked out. And it's not as easy as I just said it to make that change. And I hope someday that I think it would be an improvement and a better use of resources if it was under a single functional department and not necessarily a stovepipe. Each department has certain resources, because it is more than just the resource. So I think the answer to your question is it's more than just the resource. It's also the actual management of the function
Yes.
and the execution of the function. And I'll just close by saying that the town administrator and the buildings department has partnered with the school recently to make a change in the way that they operate in terms of building maintenance and custodial services across the entire town. And that's a great step forward, and they found a way to get it done. Snow removal won't be that easy.
Okay.
And hopefully, that's not to say that it can't be done.
okay, all right, so if I look at this as a transitional period, maybe we can, right?
There's a lot of work to be done.
Right, I get it. So this is to get us through to that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions or comments from the board for Mr. Barry? There's got to be some.
I have a question. On your, I don't know how many years, the spreadsheet, you have a couple of lines, a line and then a summary that's blank. What goes into that?
At the bottom row there?
Yes.
There's a handful of things, actually, I don't recall exactly. There's a handful of things that don't get necessarily categorized. I'd have to check. I'm not sure. It's probably just that in the spreadsheet, so I guess just to state the obvious, this is being run off of a spreadsheet, which is not ideal by any means. So we have talked with the town about getting software and other resources that can keep better track of this. So my guess is, and we can look into this and get back to, is we just didn't mark one of these items with whatever department it belongs to.
Yeah, I would add that the Capital Planning Committee is meeting next week.
Yes.
And something like that can be, administratively fixed
Yeah.
and, labeled.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, that almost certainly is one item, just, I can tell by looking at the number. That's one item.
looks like a
that
vehicle
that
lease.
It's yeah, it could be a police car or something, that just is not marked in the right category. Or a series of police cars, it wouldn't just be one car.
Might just be a vehicle. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? So likely what we'll see later in our discussions and topics is which of the items that the select board is recommending for funding. I mean, that's really what happens. The process is the capital planning committee rates the requirements, prioritizes them into the three categories. There are members from select board on the committee as well as the finance committee. I'm the rep. There are citizens at large members that did a great job. I want to thank them. Mr. Corcoran, Mr. McCaffrey, school board is represented as well. And so Mr. Barry does the yeoman's work and does the bulk of the work all on his own. You know, he has a love for Excel that, I don't know. So all that to say that, you know, there are larger entities than Millis that have capital asset management programs, divisions, and resources. You know, we don't have that, and it would be advisable and probably prudent for us to look at that. And we've, you know, the bulk of our work has been to manage this, to make sure that we are forecasting the capital needs of the town. The strategic and the next step, the long-term plan or the medium-term plan is, I think, is for us to graduate from Excel and have resources that do this professionally. I mean, I think we're doing good work, but I'm not certain, and I won't speak for John, but we're doing good work, but I don't think it's all the work that needs to be done in order to preserve the town's assets. So,
Mr. Chair?
go ahead.
I'd just like to, as I do every year, thank, you know, all the members of the committee for the work that they've done. You know, those of us who were here, you know, 6, 7 years ago, trying to figure out capital, we are light years ahead of where we were then, basically due to your efforts. And just really appreciate all the work that's gone into this. Makes our job as a finance committee so much easier. It really provides the information that every department needs, as well as the select board and the town administrator's office. It's just a huge amount of work, and it's a huge help to every member of the town as to looking at this in a comprehensive way. And just super thankful for the amount of work that's gone into this, and it's so important, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I left off one thing. We do get a lot of support from the town administrator's office, including the town administrator, Ms. Johnston, Maureen Canisi as well. So they're not necessarily mentioned by name, but they are now. So thank you very much.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
okay.
All right, well, thank you all. Have a good night.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Underhill.
Just a procedural question for the Finance Committee. We've been briefed on every one of these capital planning priorities except for the Emergency Management Office. Will they be presenting at a future meeting?
I can talk to that a little bit. So Chief Barrett speaks for the Emergency Management Office. I actually was not here on our meeting early in February. I think it was the 13th, possibly, where he presented to this committee. So I haven't finished watching that particular video. He should have presented it then. It's in his packet.
Okay, I
Okay.
need to check my own minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Nonetheless, we're not gonna, we likely won't, we'll talk about this in a little bit. We likely won't vote on this particular element of the budget tonight. But that does mean that if there are questions on something that we don't vote on tonight, that gives us time to to pose those questions for our meeting on the 11th, call those people in, and then we should have voted on just about everything by the 11th. So that's my intent. Okay?
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, next is a budget overview by Ms. Johnston and Mr. Mike Kaczynski, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Kaczynski, Town Administrator, and Carol, our Finance Director, Carol Johnson, is here as well. So tonight, I think we're going to discuss an overview of the budget as recommended, and also like to discuss a little bit how that rolls into some of the articles within the warrant, including the capital article that you just mentioned.
Okay.
So with that, Carol, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the overall budget document. Does everyone have this? Received it? This is the most updated document, and it does include some changes since you've last seen it. So I'll just mention a couple of those.
If I may.
Yes.
I guess I'm fortunate or was privy, I attended a select board meeting 2 Fridays ago, so not sure exactly when that would have been, but late March. And that was a select board public meeting. Somebody can, if they're interested, they certainly can pull it up on TV, but I was there. And it's when the select board held discussions on budget adjustments to bridge the gap on the school budget was one of the main topics. And during that time, there was discussion held as to different alternatives and different strategies to bridge that gap and to have a balanced budget. And so the reason I mention that is I would like to make sure that you cover anything that was discussed or since discussed and proposed, because that wasn't necessarily a voted budget at that time. But if you could cover the things that are either above service level requests that are recommended and will be adopted by the select board, if you know that, if they're at that point. I did not attend this last Monday's meeting for the select board. So I'm kind of looking to make sure we have situational awareness on where the select board is with their proposed budget based on, this spreadsheet here.
Right. Well, I will touch upon the items as I see them, and certainly the finance director will hopefully fill in any gaps that I might have in going over these. So, in just reviewing these, touching upon the items that the select board is recommending going forward for, you had mentioned above-level service. The first I would mention would be the staff adjustments in the Selectman Town Administrator's office. I think I had gone over those with the committee. That would be the adoption of an assistant town administrator, human resource manager position, and the elimination of the operations support manager position, as well as the addition of a part-time department assistant 1, and the reduction of the department assistant 2. That would be that change. The adoption of additional wages for elections is required really in order to keep up with the early voting, which has been successful. We're hoping to get some grants to assist with that, but those aren't guaranteed. So in order to move forward, we do need to budget those funds.
So just back to the selectmen budget, if I may, so the requested original budget of, department requests of 401 in green, then went to a proposed budget of 510, and column N, which is marked 108, is just the difference between J and N, and that's what has been discussed with the select board.
That's correct. And I will note, it is tough to follow along on some of these. I will note that one of the reasons there's been a marked increase there is there has been also some other additions, and that is the, I'm looking at the expenses, I think, for the annual audit. We've moved that from an article into the select board's budget, which is the appropriate place for it. And that is a total of $37,000. So I just want to make note of that. And the, also we have marijuana funds rolled in to that, and that goes back to the marijuana impact funds. I don't know if you want to address that separately after, but that has to do with the social worker consultant services.
Okay.
So that is on the list.
So that is included in the 108,000 or the 27%
That's correct.
increase?
That's
Okay.
correct. So those two items are some of the major differences, as well as a continued HCA funds for the administrative support for the town within that office of $9,200, and that's just a continuation from last fiscal year.
Okay. Before you move on, I think we'll just go line by line and we'll ask questions. So, Ms. Boyardi.
I understand that now Deidre's here, so she's taking over the finance committee notes and all. And I understand that you're wanting, I hope, Deidre, can you hear me? I just want to make sure the mic is okay. And I understand that we're adding 18 hours of an additional service person. With the budget being so tight, with her being added, can't this person take some of the responsibilities away from Karen that she was overloaded, especially since we now have Deidre? And second fold, is this a given for Karen, or is this a position that has to be applied for?
It'll be applied for position. We do.
Mic right into the mic if
Oh,
you could.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
We have gone through these situations in the past where certain positions have been eliminated and others ones created. It is a position that people apply for, so there will be a process involved with that. In your question in regards to the 18-hour-a-week person, at the time this was put forward, we didn't know what the status was going to be of your support going forward. I did figure on an average of 1 to 2 hours a week over the course of the whole year for support for the Finance Committee on that. So it's something we can look at. However, in looking at trying to take over as much as the HR function of the town as possible, that position would also support the HR manager and the HR function. Right now, and I think we talked about this a little bit at the last time we talked, a lot of the HR functions are spread out through the building. Some are done in the finance accountant's office, some are done in the treasurer's office. We're trying to consolidate those in one place. So between the assistant town administrator and this assistant position, we hope to really centralize the HR function for all the municipal offices.
Okay, I think this is one last question. Would it be more advantageous to just have a part-time HR and lessen Karen's role, lessen the responsibilities on Karen and have your part-time person? You're not paying, if you have a part-time and a part-time, you're not paying health insurance is all. And Karen's load would be what Karen would have to do as an as the admin, all the other things. I know she does a lot, but isn't there a better way? I just wonder if there's a more economical way of taking care of this.
I have looked at it quite a bit and had discussions with a lot of the managerial staff here. This was the most effective option that we came up with. I think we're going to struggle to find a part-time human resource professional to come in here and take on that level of responsibility. This would be a fairly high-level position. This would be someone that would be involved in collective bargaining negotiations, dealing with discipline, dealing with all kinds of major HR aspects in the town. And we've had a lot of trouble in recruiting people for part-time positions in the town, and I was concerned in this climate that we wouldn't find an effective person. And actually, if you hired a part-time human resource person and kept the operations support manager, I can assure you it would be more costly than the proposal before you.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Stedman.
Mr. Gazinski, would you help me understand how you got to the expenses of $124,000, which is greater than the $89,000 that was in what you presented to us when you presented your revised budget?
Right, I think most of that is the HCA funds are now included in the budget. They weren't before. So there's $30,000 in HCA funds for the consulting services, for the social worker consultant services, and the $37,000 of the annual audit is now rolled into that budget as well. Those were not in there before.
So that was $30,000 for the HCA?
That's correct.
From HCA for a social worker.
And plus $37,000, which historically has been an article in the warrant and now is being rolled into this budget, since it's an annual required expense of the town. Actually, it's 35,000 increase, because I reduced the other consulting line. So it actually, that line's a 5,000 reduction. But the funding is from the HCA funds, not from the general funds. And that's for that, again, for that social worker consulting firm.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Stedman?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, just a.
Ms.
point
McGinnis.
quick. Has the select board voted on the marijuana funds? Has the select board voted on the marijuana funds?
They've basically reviewed it and agreed upon it. They're going to take a final vote Monday at their regular meeting, at the same time they vote to approve the warrant.
I just asked that, Mr. Chair, because I haven't heard a lot of discussion from the select board regarding the social worker. And
Yeah.
I would like to discuss that at some point, or hear the presentation from the select board regarding the needs.
Okay, well, Monday
I also
will
would like
be,
to understand that.
Monday will be an exciting opportunity to do that, since we're holding our meetings concurrently, so we'll see what we can come up with. Okay?
Next item of note, that's changed since you last reviewed this. What's the next item? Just looking at the reader.
So I think it might be easier if we just go through each thing.
Yes.
and have it
Just-
changed.
That'd be great.
Especially the changes. I mean,
With the
if it's-
microphone, madam,
If
you're
it's,
the quiet one.
if it's at zero variance, you likely can speed over it
Right,
unless we stop you.
Exactly. So in the next one, it's the assessors for $19,900. That was put into the budget because it was an article that is being moved into the operating budget because it's an annual item that has to be done. So the biggest changes here are the marijuana HCA funding and any items that were articles that are now going to be incorporated into the budget, operating budget, instead of held out as an article.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Chair?
Mr. Stedman?
On this line, Ms. Johnson, their above-budget request was $17,800. You're at $19,800.
So
Do
there
you
are
have any
two-
idea what the other $2,000 is?
For the assessor, there were two items that she listed on the bottom of her budget submission. One was for $19,900, which is the annual yearly review of inspections for the assessor's office. And then the second one was the $17,800 that is an article because it only happens every 5 years. They're doing a recertification. So the $17,800 you'll see is an article in the warrant.
Okay.
The next item that was adjusted was $15,000 for the elections. We reviewed the 5-year period of elections, and I know that the town clerk put in for a $40,000 increase, but over time, it's only been $25,000, so that's why we reduced it by the 15. I spoke with the town clerk, and she spoke with her registrars. She hasn't come back to me, so everything should be fine with that 15. Plus, there are grants that she goes out and is able to get for early voting that wouldn't be in this number to begin with. So that would fund any overage.
Okay.
If, just for the record, I mean, I think everybody remembers this, there was some questioning as to why the increase at all, and it really was because of the added requirement for early elections, as well as factoring that into 5 elections this year, or 3 elections and town meetings.
And primaries.
Primaries, so I'm glad that that number has come down.
Okay. So the next item is the town buildings. So on the town buildings, I believe everybody understands that the town is working with the school in order to combine the services, custodial and maintenance for the interior of the building. In order to do that, we reduced our the town building salary line for the $52,000, which we had as a as the worker there. And then we also reduced our expenses by $31,700 for a total of $84,000, so that we could put that toward the $130,000 that's going over to the school.
And just clarify, how much is the school budget going up for the same services, if at all?
Well,
130.
It's going up 130,000, but I wouldn't, I would
It's not
say-
one for one, right?
I would say it's improved services. And as I said, I think unfortunately, we've struggled with funding in this line item to adequately keep up with our buildings. We've also added a number of buildings and square footage to the buildings in the community in the last 10 years. And the facilities maintenance budget has not kept up with that. So it's a combination of trying to improve the service through the manpower of the school department, as well as just beefing up that service. So it's a combination. And I think when we went over it with the committee last week, it was a net of about 15,000 additional once all the factors were figured in. But again, in my estimation, well worth it for the higher quality, more comprehensive facilities maintenance the town's going to get from the program.
Thank you.
So the next item are the employee benefits went up 15,000 approximately. That's being funded by the HCA for the teen coordinator that is going to be funded by the HCA.
You're going to have to explain that
Yeah.
more for me.
So
Sorry.
On the teen coordinator coming in, the person's going to be over 20 hours, which would be
Okay.
then benefit eligible.
Yep.
This will cover the expense for
Got
the
it.
additional benefit.
Understood. That was the piece I was missing. Thank you.
Oh, okay. The next item coming up is the police department.
Yeah.
The increase in salaries is based on the contractual that is with the new contract that was put into place. So it's been signed, so we could add it into the budget. The 54,000 in the expense line, we increased it for the police cruisers. There now will be a line item in the budget versus an article.
And just to note, that's the only union that has ratified the contracts which are expiring June 30th. The other unions, as noted in one of the articles in the warrant, are still in a negotiation, and we're setting aside funds there to fund any new contractual obligations as part of that.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
The next one is the fire department. So you'll see that there was a reduction in salaries in those particular lines. The holiday pay, when we first submitted the budget submission to everybody, for the holiday pay, it included the 4 Safer Grant employees, and the holiday pay is included in the reimbursement that we'll be getting back from the federal government for the 4 Safer employees. We reduced the overtime by $10,000, the fire chief did. The training and overtime budget, he reduced another $5,000. He reduced the training overtime by $10,000. And the stipends were actually, the $6,000 had been included as the ALS officer, ALS coordinator, I'm sorry, and it had been double counted in the stipends at the time that the submission was made. As far as expense lines, the fire chief for the building maintenance, we removed the $6,000 because that will be included as part of the overall comprehensive plan with the school, for the school custodial.
Okay.
There's $4,000 in.
Did the police do that as well? Were they able to do that, or did they not originally account for?
They didn't originally have that in their budget, but they did the police department did do some reductions. They did reduction in their maintenance contracts for 2,000. The net effect that you see is 54,000, but it was 70,000 for the police vehicles, and the other adjustments were made to bring it down to 54,862.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. McGinnis?
if I might ask on the fire department, are the 4 salaries that are currently being paid by, I think it's the ambulance revolving fund, do those show up in the salary line item?
On the items, on the individuals, the EMT officers that are currently paid out of the fire department through the ambulance revolving are in the budget. So that's part of that.
Under
400
salaries?
No. They're under the rescue wages. We have 379,000 in rescue wages, and then there's a paramedic at 76,000. We're actually funding 412,000 this year from the ambulance revolving fund.
I'm going to keep reminding every year, Mr. Chair, that the ambulance revolving fund was set up to purchase an ambulance. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that discussion's been had, and, you know, I don't think, I think there are dissenting opinions on that, so no need to keep reminding us, but we'll have the same discussion next year.
We sure will.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Stedman?
you commented that in the police budget, there's $54,000 for a new cruiser?
In the police department budget, the line item, it's
Yes.
actually 70,000 in for the police cruisers. They reduced other items in their overall expense lines, so that's why you're only seeing a $54,000
Okay.
increase.
But my question really is, in Article 18, they're asking for capital for 2 cruisers for $104,000.
Actually, I'll answer this one. Actually, that's just the authority to lease the vehicles. That's not the appropriation. The appropriation is actually in the budget. So the article in the warrant is just requesting the authority from town meeting, which requires a 2/3 vote to lease the vehicles. The actual vote to appropriate the funding is in the overall budget, the general budget.
Okay, but that's for 1 cruiser, and you're asking for...
Actually, this is for 3 cruisers, because what this is it's paying for the leases. So there already is 1 lease in effect for a cruiser, and the chief is seeking 2 additional cruisers as part of his fleet plan for the department. So in the warrant, they're requesting for authorization to purchase 2 additional cruisers.
Right.
So the total cost of all that on an annual basis is approximately, I think, $70,000. So again, the whole appropriation is in the budget. The only reason that's listed there as a separate warrant article is because under state law, whenever you borrow or lease in a town government, you need a 2/3 vote at town meeting.
Okay.
So that specifically needs that authorization. And it lists what the vehicle costs, total costs are for those 2 vehicles, but the actual funding is in, I think, Article 3, the omnibus budget.
So then if I understand this, the annual lease cost is in the budget.
Yes.
This is to authorize leasing 2 additional vehicles.
That's correct.
Okay,
And
thank
the
you.
actual expense for that is in the chief's budget.
Okay,
I just want to note, Sarah, you are slated to discuss that article at town meeting, so, you know, this would be critical. And it is confusing. These are good questions. There's a article for the authorization to lease, and then there's a budget line for the actual appropriation. I mean, that's kind of as simply as I can explain it in my layman's terms, but if and when you have questions, these are the people to talk to in addition to Chief Sapphire.
So there will be, Joyce has, I believe, the one for the school computers, and it's the same situation, that typically they were paid out through an article, but because they're a normal operating item, they've been rolled into the budgets this year. But all it's doing in that article, Joyce, is authorizing the school to enter into a new lease, and it would be for a 3-year period.
Thank you.
I think
Mr.
Sarah-
Chair?
I think Sarah has that one, too. Go ahead, Ms. Garzon.
So the way that the articles are written, it's a vote to borrow under MGL Chapter 44. So is that correct? Is that the right way to structure the warrant article? A lease is considered a borrowing?
From a legal standpoint, in municipal law, it's interchangeable. Because it's basically a lease to purchase,
Okay.
it's considered, for the purposes of Mass General Law, it's the same.
But even though the funding will come from taxation?
Yes.
Okay.
right.
Just wanted to make sure before we get to the motions.
May I ask one more stupid question?
Absolutely, these are not stupid questions, especially
So-
for those that are going to be responsible to
So-
articulate.
We're making a new financial commitment for 2 leases. That's a typically a capital item. Why wasn't that in the capital planning committee report as a priority one?
Because a decision has been made, even though it may be a capital item, it's a budgetary item because it's year after year after year. It's a gray area, and it's been decided by the select board at, many people have opined on this, pros and cons, that if it's, regardless if it's a capital item, especially, and it's further confused by the fact that it's a lease,
Yes.
and it's in the budget every year, it's more like a budget item.
Well, you know I don't like that because that builds the incentive for a less frugal chief to, because the lease is coming up and it's in the budget, to always, to not run it for another year or two. But this is not the time to discuss that.
I understand. The time to discuss it, though, there will be time to discuss it, and it should be after you sit in one of those cruisers.
Right.
And go for a ride.
And in all
For all of us.
defense,
I haven't, so I don't know.
support having the cruiser.
Yeah.
I don't like the
Only in the back
methodology
seat. I only go in the
that
back
makes it almost automatic.
but in all defense.
Please,
for-
go ahead.
Thank you. In all defense for our police chief, he gets close to $400,000 in grant money. So
Oh,
that
he's
we're not-
awesome.
Yeah, so
The
that.
next guy
I
might
mean,
not be.
Well, we've got him for another 3 years, so,
Okay.
at least.
Okay, keep going, please, thanks.
Okay, the next change that was made is to the dispatch. You'll see that there was an increase of $10,000 for salaries. Again, they're
Contract.
part of the, exactly. So the union contract was just finalized and ratified, so that's why the increase is there.
How contentious, I know you can't divulge the negotiations, but how contentious would you qualify those negotiations? I mean, are those rigorous?
The negotiations with the police union and the dispatchers union were very smooth, very professional. Not to say there weren't differences of opinion, some push and pull, but it was very civil, very professional, and, I would describe it as a collaborative exercise. And again, not to say there wasn't a lot of back and forth, but I think it was done in a reasonable manner.
So the budget went up, a certain percent. Do you start 10, 15% away and you work yourselves to 7%?
It
Or
varies for every contract negotiation. I don't think nothing of that magnitude occurred in this negotiation. Actually, Mr. Chairman, behind me, he was the board's representative in the negotiations. And again, I thought they went very smoothly. I can't say the same for all the negotiations with all the unions, because they're all different. But since I've been here, I can certainly say the police has always been, very professional and appropriate in the discussions and deliberations.
I'm going to ask you kind of a tongue-in-cheek question, and that is, I noticed that the expense line has gone down by almost the same amount as the union increase. How much strong-arming of chiefs of fire did you do in order to get almost a net zero, budget adjustment after the union negotiation?
So on this particular item, the item that went down as equipment repairs, they had put in, because of the problem they're having with the console over at the in dispatch, because that's really where it is, they put in $10,000, but once it got up to the high ranking on the capital committee, so dispatch did ask for the
Okay.
$11,000,
Okay.
but the select board more than likely is going to request that capital item be purchased, so we could reduce that $10,000.
All right, I apologize, I don't mean to insinuate that you're,
That's okay.
It
could have happened.
I have a lot of discussions with different department heads.
good, good for you,
That,
good for us.
Yes, that sometimes are difficult, but I have to say that, they're very accommodating, and we work with them.
Okay.
And understand that there are limitations to available revenues.
Thank you.
So the next item, where there were changes, is the Millis Public Schools. I think we already addressed part of that, but the line item, the increases are $130,000 for the shared custodial, taking on the responsibility for the town. cost portion of the building maintenance and cleaning. The school bus lease being incorporated into the operating budget where it was an article before, that's for 90,000. School computer leases of 69,900. That's, again, was an article, now it's being incorporated into their budget. Medicare reimbursement, $5,000. That was an article, it's now being incorporated into the operating budget. And there's a one-time, non-recurring special education funding for $361,000. That is their shortfall this year based on the new students that have to be transported to different locations for the coming year. So that funds the full amount of what we believe their deficit would be.
I'm just going to recap those. So $130,000 for shared custodial.
Yep.
$90,000 for school bus leases from capital items to operating budget. $69,000 for computer leases, same situation. $5,000 for Medicare audit, which ultimately results in plus $40,000 or
Exactly.
somewhere in there
Yes.
for reimbursements, and then a $361,000 sped shortfall. What's the net of those 5 items?
Honestly, I can't tell you
Okay,
right off.
I can do
the
math
top of my
later.
head.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just
The
did it, there's
other-
a $67,000 variance.
There's
From one to
from-
the
a
other?
couple of other
722.
items.
Okay.
So we also put in the marijuana impact funds. So there's an additional $35,815.50 for a half year of a social emotional learning program teacher,
How much was that, 35?
$35,815.
Yep.
$10,000 for after-school activities through extended day program.
So these are ASL essentially, or no? These are HCA?
HCA
Okay.
money, right.
That's actually rolled into their
But
budget.
we, right, rolled all of it into everybody's operating budget, because that's really what it's for, is their operating budget. And $21,000 for vaping detectors for the middle high school bathrooms and locker rooms.
Adds up.
So there you go.
Mr. Chair?
All 3 of those are HCA. Mr. Stedman?
When, are you working off of the $17,000 that the schools made the cuts to keep it the 4%, or the $18,122 that he really wanted but was prepared to make cuts?
We're, with the way, we worked off of the $17,241,132.
Okay, the 17,241.
And added 4% to it, so that was the original agreement.
So the cuts he was prepared to make to stay at that number are still in that budget? So it's less than he would really like. Is that correct?
So right now, we're proposing $18,582,770 budget.
Well, when he came before us,
Right.
he really asked for 18,122, but said, yeah, he could make cuts that he wasn't really happy to make. They all had negatives to keep it at the 4% at the 17, whatever that is.
Right, so we're trying to make sure that they get their 4% plus the $361,000.
Plus the $361,000.
Which is what they said they'd be.
But the
in
cuts he was
deficit,
going to
so they
make are
wouldn't
still
have to
in
make
place
cuts.
then.
I would have to defer to him on the
Right.
specifics, but I know that from his discussion with the committee, he reviewed $361,000 in core cuts that he believed he was going to need to make if he didn't have those additional funds above the 4%, and that is the $361,000 here. I
Okay.
cannot,
That's at
I cannot
360.
verify.
That's not step then.
Pardon?
That's not step then. That's not the sped. That's
Oh.
not sped.
It is. So the 361 covers the deficit he indicated was being caused by an unusual increase in the sped costs.
And that's a non-recurring, so next year will not be in the
We'll go
space
back
budget.
down that
The
361.
space budget will be reduced by the 361. And then we'll add the 4% to that.
I'm going to go, I'm going to describe all of these during town meeting as I go through the budget and Article 3, I think it is. So I will be asking these same questions for clarification. I'm going off of the spreadsheet that she's provided. I mean,
Right.
I suspect in my school budget book, I have written down 18,122, and I probably have it circled. I didn't bring that binder tonight.
I didn't either.
So I'm gonna go back and look, and hopefully we'll see it. And I'll make a note that if we can have a discussion with them, further discussion with them next week.
So in there, so one point that I want to make to everybody is that the items that they would not have had in their original budget, which we have put in, are the 130,000 for the custodial. They would not have had that in their original budget.
Right.
Because it hadn't been agreed upon yet. Also, the school bus lease for 90,000, they would not have had that in their original budget. School computer lease of 69,900, that would not have been. in
So
their
that may
original
be the
budget.
difference right there
Right.
between, I don't know,
And
if
the
somebody can do the
Medicare
math
for
real quick.
5,000. Because
Eight-
those items were always articles, and now the decision was made that they'll be rolled in as operating budget versus
Understand.
standalone articles.
So let me just verify that real quick. 18,
Go ahead.
18.122.
Right, that had in it.
122 minus point, hold on one second, please, minus .13, minus .09, minus .07.
17,832.
Minus
It's-
.005.
It's close.
5,000, there's another 5,000 that was
For
there.
the Medicare audit?
Yeah.
Okay.
17,827.
And we're still close, but not exactly there. So we'll have to do a little bit more digging to answer that question. Okay? And I don't want to put you off, but
No,
at the
no.
same time, I want to progress, so everybody comfortable?
I just have one question, Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead,
Thank you.
Ms. McGinnis.
I understand that sped funds are reimbursed a year later or several months later.
I am aware that they receive circuit breaker funding, that they can hold over they can carry it forward. They also have the ability to do, if they're in a situation where they could do a prepay for school for the coming year, they could do that with circuit breaker funding. But as far as what they get reimbursed for one, I don't have that information. You have to get that from the school.
I'd like that information, Mr. Chair, because I'm wondering where the reimbursed funds are going. Are they going to an account to say, well, let's use this for next year for the sped funds? Or is it going into the town's general fund, the school's general
No,
fund?
None of the schools' funding goes into any of the general fund.
Okay.
They're held as a separate fund, and so the circuit breaker is a separate fund altogether.
Is there an
It's not a
accounting
general
through the
fund.
chair? Can we ask the school, is there an accounting as to what's done for the last, 3 or 4 years with this funds? How has it gone into the budget?
I've written down the
Thanks.
request. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So the next item is the DPW budget, which is the highway. There was a small increase of $607 for an adjustment to the director's salary.
I really want to dig into that.
I know, that's what I figured. But I figured I gotta say it, because otherwise you're gonna be asking, where'd this
That's not true. That's not true.
So the DPW director made some, we discussed it with him, and so we reduced his engineering services to $3,000, which is what was approved at town meeting the year before. We did the same for his police details. It was reduced by $10,000 to bring it down to $20,000, which was the year before's budget. We took out office cleaning. We took the whole $9,000 out, or it was reduced by that, because now that will be part of the general custodial maintenance through the school. It's custodial service.
What was the first one? Was it engineering?
3,000.
Engineering services.
Thank you.
Right. They had requested $8,000. He reduced it back to what it was in the, approved for at the '22 town meeting. Let's see.
Mr. Chair, if I could just
Landfill.
ask, I'm sorry, continue, please.
Okay. The landfill monitoring, he reduced that down to $20,000, which is $5,000 more than he had last year.
Landfill monitoring, is that transfer station? Is that
No,
something
I
totally
think
different?
that, you must have had an old dump.
Yep.
And so it goes for monitoring any of the gases and runoff from that particular old.
Where is the landfill?
Island.
Island Road.
Off Island Road.
As part of the closure permit with the state, we're required to do the annual testing.
Thank you. I learned something new at every meeting.
That was a warrant article a couple town meetings ago.
I wasn't there.
If I could just ask, Mr. Chair,
Ms. McGinnis.
the engineering budget, is that divided amongst the enterprise funds as well, or is that strictly the town portion?
This is just the town's
Okay.
portion, so the town, every one of the funds has engineering costs in there for their budget. So,
Okay.
and it's based on what they do for that particular enterprise. That's how it would be charged.
Thank you.
The tree care was reduced by 10,000 from the request. It was put back to what it was for, what was adopted in '22.
What page are you on, Carol?
Oh, I'm just giving you the breakdown.
Oh, breakdown, okay, okay,
DPW.
okay, sorry.
That's how we get to the total
Thank
$50,000
you.
decrease that the DPW did,
Thank you.
so. Yeah, the next item is the Board of Health. So the Board of Health, we increased the nurse, the public health nurse by $5,000.
And this
And-
is really to deal with any spike in COVID that might occur over the winter. We don't know if that does occur. We don't know what grant funds will be available. Certainly hope to have some, but it's to make sure we have ample funds there to at least do some additional nursing services if needed over the coming winter.
Right.
Maybe you can just answer this in a yes or no. I'm not looking for a full breakdown, but likely we'll get it at some point. How close on snow removal were we to the town meeting adopted 22 and actual expenditures to date?
We are in deficit in the snow and ice for this
Okay.
year.
Okay, that's a yes or no question. I won't get into it. It's sufficient. Thank you.
Let me see. Yeah, so the Council on Aging, the request initially from the Council on Aging was for a 9-hour increase in her outreach worker. The board asked her to come back to give more specifics about that. I think she reached out to the outreach worker, and the outreach worker had decided she only would work an additional 5 hours a week. So there was a reduction. That's why you see it's favorable in the Council on Aging right now.
But it's an increase of $6,148.
And 85
Over
cents.
the, yes.
Over what?
So
yeah.
that proposal's now at 5 hours a week, not 9, not 23.
That's
Right.
correct.
Okay.
And there was quite a discussion at the select board meeting. I believe that the director and council plan to submit for a full-time office assistant next year for FY '24. And I had indicated that that would be a high priority moving forward from
Good.
this office in trying to get funded in FY '24.
Okay. Let's get through 23.
That's good, what?
Let's get through 23.
So the next item is the library. So the library.
How about the expenses in the Board of Health? The 5,200, which is,
The Board of Health, so it's $1,200 for, right now, we do not pay for the public health nurse's cell phone. So the $1,200 is to pay for the cell phone in
Right.
'23. And then $4,000 from the marijuana impact funds for the e-cigarette education, cannabis use in e-cigarettes and vaping.
thank you.
And the library, I think, has an HCA.
Yeah, so the library has several HCA, that's where this funding's coming from. So it extends the library hours on Thursday evening until 8. That's for $10,400. The extend the library to be open on Saturdays during July and August, $2,188. Extend the library on Friday evenings until 8 is $10,400. So that's the increase there of the $23,000.
Actually, there is one more. That's the library gardens maintenance.
You put that under town buildings.
Oh, we did, that's
Yep.
right. Thank you.
I'm sorry, you put that under where, Mr. Chair?
Town buildings.
Okay.
It's under town buildings. So the
Thought
next
you were going to
item
say Finance Committee.
is the Recreation Department. The decision was made to rescind the 53.5E revolving fund that the Recreation Department has now, and to fully fund it under the operating budget. Yes, this has been in discussion for quite a long time. So that's where the increase here is in the salaries to, for the director. And,
And there's a
And-
corresponding increase in
well, we have.
revenues.
Right,
yes.
and so we have also, so it's the increase in the rec director's salary, now we pay half. This would pay the full amount. And then there's also HCA money for the rec department for a teen coordinator for $11,960. The benefits we already talked about for the teen coordinator. The staff for inclusive camp is $10,880. In the increase in expenses line for the rec department is $2,000 from the HCA money, and the balance of that money is to fund the programming for the rec department. So we projected that the rec department will receive, included in our revenue numbers, we've included $100,000 for revenue from the rec receipts, and that will offset the increase of the $91,000 in the funding for the rec department to come 100% on the operating budget.
Is there any increases to benefits funded by the town because of the dissolving of the
No.
revolving?
We're paying them anyway. They haven't had sufficient funding to pay for their benefits.
Okay, just remember this being an issue in the past years, and I think
Right.
there were adjustments made for that. Okay.
On a 53.5E, if you pay a full-time salary out of it, you have to pay the benefits associated with that person.
Okay.
Extended Day currently has a revolving fund, and they pay all, they are in the same situation. They have to pay all benefits for their staff. The only revolving fund that is excluded from that on a 53.5E is transportation for bus drivers. There is an exception made for that.
Thank you.
The Oak Grove Farm is an HCA as well.
Right. So the next one coming up is the Okra Farm, and that is coming up for, on the HCA is paying for that, the impact funds. It's grounds improvement to encourage active outdoor recreation for children. That's the $17,055.
On that one, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Stedman.
there's also a warrant for $16,900.
That's for a different project. That's for a playground.
No, that's for trail improvements, is the way it's written.
But it's two, but they're two separate projects on this. I checked them out because I thought the same thing.
Yeah,
And they-
so it's 9555 plus 16,9? So we're looking at over $25,000 for trails?
Wasn't the playground improved last
Yeah, that-
fall town meeting?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So the 17,055 right
Right.
here is the marijuana impact funds.
Right, that's
for-
$5,550 for a soccer goal, $1,950 for
items, right,
signs, and
right.
$9,555
Right.
for trails.
Right.
And then there's another $16,900 for trails.
Which is a separate project altogether.
Yes.
It is a trails, but it's a separate project. The other one.
So it's
this one-
$25,000 for trails there.
Well,
When you add those two
and
together.
some
No,
other-
because the project that they have for the 17,000 is for the soccer fields. So it's soccer fields, soccer nets, and other things, but it's totally
It
separate.
says trails, that's what
And
they
it-
said.
Right, so there might be a portion of it, but between the two, because I looked it over because I thought they were asking for the same amount of money, but it's not. It's two separate projects.
So I'm totally lost.
So the.
I understand the 17.
Right, so there's an article for the 16,900 that was approved by the, it's an
Okay.
article coming up.
Okay.
The Community Preservation Commission approved that.
Article 10? No, Article 11, sorry. Community Preservation, Open Space, Recreation Reserve Fund,
Right.
Okra Farm Trail Improvement Project.
Right.
Okay. So there's funds added for soccer goals and improvements into the budget, plus the potential for additional appropriated funds from
Right. so
in
the-
Article 11.
right,
Be
so
two separate projects.
They're two separate projects.
Just
So in
need-
the Article 11 one, they have actual pictures of gullies through the woods that get rained out, and muddy and all of that. One of the explanations was that the cross-country coach had to actually do makeshift so that kids could run through there because they were losing their sneakers.
Really
And
dangerous.
stuff. So, so it's two separate projects. It may both have trails in on it. Is that two separate projects, John?
I don't know. We walked those trails as the Conservation Commission because they are in terrible shape and they need to be improved.
Right.
I'm fully in support of that, and that's the best trail network we have. And it pales in comparison to our neighboring communities. So the work needs to be done. But it seems to me that they're making sure they're getting funding and getting it from two sources. And they haven't designed it, so they don't know what the cost is going to be. They don't know whether they're going to use crushed stone, if they're going to have to build boardwalks,
Okay.
exactly how they're going to do it. So I'm not, you know.
So what I'm going to do is, we likely won't vote on Article 11 tonight. I'll put it on here to do for next week's meeting on Monday, and we'll clarify, what is Article 11, what is this additional funds to the budget, to the operating line, and we'll clarify that. And then there is a select board meeting member here, and he will likely do the same, so that we're clear and we can vote. Sufficient?
Yes.
Thank you.
And those are all the changes.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Garzal?
So I've been digging into stabilization fund lately, and I know that is partially dependent on the town budget. By adding the HCA funds into our town budget, is that going to affect that calculation?
I don't think it's going to impact it. I mean, you do have a policy where you have to have 5% of your budget into the stabilization, but in my mind, this is a one-time amount for the HCA. It's not covered into your normal operating budget. It won't carry on forward. Like, the whole idea behind stabilization is you 5% as a rainy day fund in case there's an
Right.
emergency.
I would classify it as 5% of our general fund, so that basically raise and appropriate local receipts, not special agreement income or other types of things.
I understand that,
Because this is
however,
going away.
when I go to the state website and it shows our town budget versus our stabilization fund balance, it now shows that we're under 5% for the past 4 years, because of the way that, I assume we have to fill out the forms for the state and what they consider to be our town budget versus the calculation that we are using.
When they do the tax recap, is that what you're?
It's through the data sheets.
Yeah, the tax recap takes into consideration all the enterprise funds as well.
Okay.
So that's, the community preservation's included in there, all the enterprise funds are included there, and the general fund.
I just want to make sure that we are meeting,
The 5%.
that bonding
Right.
threshold,
Right.
with our stabilization fund so that we can get the best bond rate possible.
Right.
Is there a representative at the state, DOR or whoever it is, that we can ask that question?
Sure.
And get them to answer, hey,
Yep.
where are we?
Right.
There's actually a website that the state puts out that has the information, and it shows our rate, which is under 5% for the past several years. I was trying to find the funds that I needed to use to make the calculation, and it's not user-friendly because it's a state website. But I can give you the link easily, so you can kind of go and see, like, what is the data that I'm looking at. Because my question is that what the bond raters are looking at, or are they looking
Why else
at
would they
other?
provide why
Well,
else would they
yeah.
advertise it?
Right. So we would, we can ask Hilltop Financials. They're the bond advisors. So we haven't had, in the calls that we've had with Moody each year, that's never come up.
Okay. Yeah, it's just something that we want to
Yep.
stay on top of,
Sure.
obviously.
Yes.
And, we've had discussions on that, and it is the intent to add funds to the stabilization at the fall town meeting, when free cash is certified, as well as OPEB and our unemployment, additional funds to our unemployment account that we're trying to build.
So your recommendation is looking like you'll defer those, recommending deferring those until fall town meeting?
Because of the unusual financial strain that the school is going through, and other needs of the town, we are recommending that deferred to the fall.
Yeah, running my free cash calculations, I was kind of coming to the same conclusion.
Okay.
Chair?
Ms. McGinnis.
Is there any concern that for the past 4 years, there hasn't been 5% in the stabilization fund?
Well, I would say that's not how I've been doing the calculations, so we will check on that.
Oh, okay.
And find out how the bond agencies are looking at that from the standpoint of the town's policy, and our budget and the percentages and stabilization. It has kept within 5%, but when you add all those other factors, enterprise funds and other funds that are generally not considered part of the, the base budget that the stabilization fund usually supports, it's a different number. So it's a good point, something we need to look into, and it certainly underscores the need to pay attention to this, to address that and make adjustments at the fall town meeting.
Yeah, I'll echo that. My numbers had been showing that it was above 5%, but then when I use the state numbers, it shows it's
good.
below.
Well said.
We do keep an eye on it.
Right, good. Mr. Chair, I might also, what's the reasoning of putting the marijuana impact funds into the individual budgets? I'm nervous that, someone down the road might, the funds are gone now, and it appears like they're automatically sitting in the operating budgets rather than people looking at the HCA funds like we used to and say, this is. Now, all of a sudden, they're absorbed into the town budget, Mr. Chair, and I'm just wondering how people will notice what the HCA funds are being used for.
Carol or Mike,
Well,
would you
the,
comment on that?
We published what the HCA funding is.
Right.
So there is information out there for people to see how it got funded, where it got funded, and know that it is only a one-year appropriation. This doesn't roll over. People have to request it each year. It has to be something that they have to put the request in. So it's based on who submitted and what's available, and then ultimately, it's our free cash once it's certified, how much is available of it at the time to make, when the requests come through.
Put a different way, though, and if I may interject, put a different way, if the money is reflected in the budget numbers, and then at the end of the host community period where where the revenue is available, it may artificially show we've reduced our budget, in which case, not really, we just lost the revenue.
Well, you did reduce your budget, because now you no longer have those services.
Not in
And
the sense
you've
that
been
we've
paying
taken
from it.
budget cuts. What we've done is we've lost the revenue, so we've taken away the item.
Right, exactly.
I think there's probably
Because
some
that's-
merit to look at anything that's one-time funded should not necessarily, even it goes back to the same discussion we just had on stabilization. If it's one-time funded, you just said, hey, it's not included in the 5% calculation. Well, then perhaps get it out of the budget. Show it
Well, I
different,
think
or it's a
For
start.
us to run it for DOR, it's going to be part of it has to be part of these numbers, because it's, when we do our tax recap, it's included in our number for our operating budget.
Okay.
I understand that, Mr. Chair, but that's reporting to DOR. I personally believe it's a different aspect than reporting to the town, because what I heard someone say at a meeting, it could have been a select board member or someone here, what was life like before the HCA funds came in? Were these departments surviving without it? Then all of a sudden you get this money, just like the schools got all this COVID money, and now they're stuck with trying to figure out what to do with that. Not that they're even including that, but I just don't understand the logic that you're preparing DOR budget documents for us to look at.
Well, this is the overall total budget for the
I get it. It's a
It-
difference of
I
opinion.
know,
We're just stating what
I
I believe.
Mr. Chairman? I mean, I certainly understand the viewpoint and the possible confusion. My recommendation would be, if there is a concern, the Finance Committee may want to consider putting the breakdown chart, it's one page in your flyer.
I was, as we're having this discussion, I was thinking that, we draft the town report, so we can put anything we want in it, and
Right.
and I've been, we will verbalize that at town meeting, so perhaps that goes right in there with a narrative that says the following items are HCA funded, which is a finite resource, and will come out of the budget, at whatever point, and it becomes record.
And from the other standpoint, we could have people complain to us if we don't put it in the budget, and people thinking we're trying to hide that and not showing what the full budget availability of that department is. So I see both sides of that. I think perhaps the way to address it is to include it as required by the DOR for our reporting, but then put that sheet in the packet, the flyer you send out, to make sure the public is full knowledge that those amounts are supplemental and are concluded within those departmental budgets.
Okay. We'll likely be discussing this more. Okay. Anything else on the last page, or are we complete with the review?
Mr.
I have
Chair?
one.
Ms. Garzon?
Well, if you have a question specifically on the budget.
I do.
Then
It's a very
you go
straightforward
first.
question. For the debt service, I assume that there's no debt service in there for the PFAF machine, plant, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
All of the debt service for the enterprises are in the enterprise budgets.
Okay.
And do we have those, Mr. Chair? Can you supply us for Monday's meeting or tomorrow with whatever's updated on those? Thank you. Including the indirect costs, please?
Right, there shouldn't be a change to what Mr. McKay's already submitted, but I will be sure to give them to you on Monday.
Got lots of papers. Just
Okay.
want to make sure I'm up to date on whatever
And
we've
you
discussed.
found another 150,000 in total revenue, if I read this right.
So the extra 150,000 in total revenue,
Yes.
$100,000 of that is for recreation revenue, bringing the rec department fully onto the operating budget to offset the $91,000 increase.
Okay.
And there was an additional 50,000 for new growth that was added.
Mr. Chair?
Hold on one second. Okay, Mr. Stedman?
Uh,
So the 50,000, the
50,000.
select board has they can, with the advice and counsel of town administrator and the assessor's office, can make adjustments to new revenue projections. And
Yeah, that's fine.
they've opted for 50,000.
I just wanted to understand it.
Yeah, just making sure we're clear
and
on
then-
that, and then we can move on.
And the total revenue there, that was the levy limit from your other sheet. What's the definition of levy limit?
The levy limit is the most that you're allowed to have as your taxable amount for the 2.5. So you take your base from your prior year,
Right?
and then you add the 2.5%
2.5.
to that, and then you add your new growth, and then you add your debt exclusion.
Right.
So
So that
those are
would-
the items, that's the amount that goes on to the onto the recap, as well as local receipts and the rest of that. So
Right.
what it ends up being, if you wanted, I know you had the question about setting the
Yes.
tax rate, and it all depends on what gets voted at town meeting.
Right, but as of now, this is the current tax
Right.
rate plus 2.5%.
Right.
So there would be a tax increase if all this happens and everything's approved yet.
I'm not sure, because of the new growth coming in, it would get
It
spread.
may
You
offset
may-
it.
Right, exactly,
If it exceeds what you anticipate.
right.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Moriarty?
I have a question about the recreation department. I understand that they've been asking to do it the way it's now being changed. However, am I correct in saying that their funds have to be used up by the end of the year, June 30th, the end of June? What happens for their budget for being able to pay for their summer expenses? Because they have summer programs that they used to use the way they used to use their money before. They were able to pay for their summer programs, pay for their camps, pay for everything ahead of time, or have the money available so that they could purchase whatever they needed for the camps. By changing it to this way, how do they then in turn pay for all of that?
So what happens once we rescind or remove the recreation 53.5E, any balance in that revolving fund as of June 30th will revert over to the general fund and will be part of your free cash for the fall. Then on July 1st, they get a full budget. So they have their full budget, they have their expense line in there, so they can run all their summer programs, they can do everything that they need. This is all based on the anticipation that they're going to bring in $100,000 in recreational revenue. So that's built into our revenue number.
Okay.
So any money's coming into the town for recreation, whether it is from somebody wanting to sponsor summer program, summer nights or something like that, all that money will have to go into the general fund in the recreation revenue.
The thing is a lot of the monies are needed prior to June 3rd. She can't wait till, I don't think she can wait till July 1st to pay for, maybe you can explain it better to me. I know that you met with someone, was it with Tim today?
I did, if I may, Mr. Chair. I did have the opportunity to meet with the chair and another member of the rec committee, as well as the recreation director earlier today. We discussed precisely these issues. They understand that the revolving account, if this goes through, will be dissolved on June 30th. And they understand, I believe, how the budget process would work. And if there are particular questions about the timing of payments for certain programs, they can certainly follow up and meet with the finance director and I to discuss that. But the way this is set up, it is to transition them from a revolving fund operation to a general fund operation. And it is a transition. And they had expressed some concerns that what happens if their programs are successful beyond their wildest dreams and they're bringing in $200,000 in revenue, but they run out of expenses in March or April because they only have enough money to fund so many of their expenses. I indicated at that point, if that happy circumstance were to happen, they should come back and meet with the director and I, and we will discuss with them the options, including meeting again with the finance committee, maybe a transfer at the May town meeting next spring to cover any year-end expenses that are needed. That would be a happy problem to have, and we're very open to working with them on that. And I'm hopeful that the finance committee would be willing to work with them on that as well. But it is a transition, but it's a very doable transition, and one that, in a way, they have been seeking for longer than I've been here.
Right.
And it is difficult because getting rid of the revolving account takes away some flexibility for them, and I totally understand that, and we talked about that. But I think it is worth the difficulties involved to make that change. And I certainly committed to them that we're going to work with them if they hit hurdles or problems to make sure that it doesn't have a negative impact on their ability to provide those services to the community.
Would there be any way of keeping a portion having a portion for revolving, no.
It just doesn't.
It's either
yeah,
or.
Yeah, because it really, we have to depend on that revenue for our budget numbers. Because without
Okay.
that, we have to lower our revenue estimates by $100,000, and then we don't have those funds for their budget.
Okay.
It's sort of a catch-22, bit of a transition year. As I said, if they bring in $200,000 this year, then next year, the finance director can put an estimate that they're of revenue closer to that number.
Okay.
And that will allow us to increase their budget for the year after. So
Makes
it's sort of
sense.
like, it's a little bit of a delay.
Yeah.
And I understand, again, I understand their concerns, but it is a necessary change in order to move forward with this.
Okay, and I just had one other question about
Quickly,
the.
please.
Yes, about the computers for the school. So that comes from free cash?
No. The article that you have this year, Joyce, the computers have now been moved into the operating budget for the school. So they're already in the budget. The question on the article you have is the same as the police cruisers. It's just authorizing the school to be able to enter into a contract for new computers.
Okay.
So that's all it is. It's just an authorization to enter into a contract.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask how much is in the rec department's revolving fund now, and are they turning any money back into the town?
They do not turn any money into the town. They have since 2013, they had a balance of $44,000 in the revolving fund, but at that time, the town actually paid $20,000 for the director's, part of the director's salary. So if you, over time, they typically haven't been profitable. Through fiscal year '21, that $44,000 ended up, worked its way down over time to $33,000, and the town in '21 paid $41,000 out for the director's salaries and
So
expenses.
is there a balance in their revolving fund now?
Right at this minute, I can't tell you.
Okay.
I didn't look that up before I came.
I was just wondering if they could keep it because they got it this year to pay for things, Mr. Chair, rather than turning it back to the town. But I don't.
The law says when you rescind it, that all the money reverts over to the general fund.
But the law doesn't say that they can't do it right now, so there's no,
if
they are
if
the
they
authority
have
over that
things-
money.
If they have things that they have
Right.
to spend.
Right.
The only thing is, they're still not, they could pay for deposits, but they couldn't prepay something out of it. The only accounts that can prepay anything are the school, and it's only prepaid tuitions for the next year.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Garzon, and this is the last question, because we're gonna,
Well, this is moving
Power
on
on.
from budgets specifically.
Okay.
It's free cash. So when I look at your budget, you kind of have it broken out by revenues, and one of them is free cash. Is that, I assume that free cash includes the HCA funds?
Yes.
And can you break that down for me? If you can't today, then you have an update to your spreadsheet, awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. I'll plug this in so I can figure out kind of where we end up as we discuss our capital items next week. Great, thank you.
You'll see I have a line item there for capital items, so you already know what the number's going to be.
I just want to take 10 seconds and compliment you on
really.
your knowledge of literally
Everything.
hundreds
Really,
of budget
Carol.
lines, where it comes from, where it goes to. And this is not like a unique, it's not like you just went for the cycle in baseball and, this is week in, week out. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Very lucky to
Second.
have her.
Okay. Okay, we're going to go through the warrant articles. I had asked,
Can I just,
Oh, no, go ahead.
yes, you may.
I'm sorry.
Quickly.
You specifically sent me an email at about 4:30 this afternoon to ask about the CARES and the ARPA funding. I'd like to
Oh,
give
yeah,
that out to
Go ahead.
everybody.
Go ahead.
And so we can,
Yep.
then you can go to warrant articles. I know you're the chair, you can do
Thank you.
whatever you want, but.
No, I'm going to defer to you.
We
Thank
do
you.
what you want.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
See, she just said it doesn't come from free cash.
Thank you. I can read this.
Look at that, that's fantastic.
I still have to
What
ask
is?
a question as to
That
The
we're
hundred-
only returning $139
Oh, okay.
of 730,000 received. That's fantastic. Of course not.
But you have to give something just to show them that, you know, we're not,
Opportunities don't come along more than once in a generation.
it's the ARPA money that I'm wondering about.
There's a ways to go. Carol and Mike, on the ARPA funds, can you just tell us what are our requests, qualifying requests, and just kind of the status of those?
I can speak to that a little bit. As far as the ARPA funds, Carol has laid the numbers out here very well. So as far as the expenditures of those funds, the Select Board has made it the priority to use the funds for the PFAS water filtration plant, realizing that this would be a huge burden on the water ratepayers if this was left for them to pick up, the entire cost for this. So the priority of the board was to put this forward to offset that. We do need, as you'll see in the warrant, we did have to request an increase in the borrowing, but that's because we have to have the full amount that we need in there, even though we have grant funding coming in. So it is expected that this grant funding available through ARPA would be used for that project. So this will be different than the CARES Act. We won't have 1,000 small bills. It'll be towards this one big project. And we are actively seeking other grant funds through the state and federal government, and have had personal conversations with Congressman Auchincloss, as well as all our state legislative delegation, trying to get additional funds to help offset these costs. So hopefully within the next 3 to 6 months, we'll be reporting some additional grant funds, but these things take time, and we're working on them, so.
Any more questions on this? Mr.
I
Stebbins?
just want to make one public kind of status is we got notification this week that the erosion controls are in place for the construction of that, so we've got a site visit from Concom scheduled on Saturday to look at that, and after that, there may be a pre-construction meeting. So that project is, they've at least put up the erosion controls.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my goal here in this next section of the meeting is to go through the warrant articles. I plan to be done at 10 o'clock, whether we're done or not. And I'm not intending to discuss every article or vote on every article, but I would ask that, Mike, that you lead us through it. And Carol, I don't think you need to stay for this, but you're...
I would prefer Carol stay for this.
Okay, okay. So what,
Some tough questions coming.
my intent, Mike, really is to go through the low-hanging fruit, for lack of a better word, go through the low-hanging fruit of those that you think we have all the information we're gonna get between up to now, that we possibly could vote on them, have discussion, and move on. I know that there are some, like the budget, that we're not gonna discuss further tonight, and we would vote on that next week. I do want to make a point that I do plan to have some discussion on the petition articles 29 and 30. So I may stop you at, say, quarter of, if we're not that far, so that we have an opportunity to discuss the petition articles 29 and 30.
So I will try to make my comments brief, Mr. Chair, and run through these, and just stop me if there are any questions. So Article 1, we just added the information in that today. Does everyone have that updated copy that outlines the unpaid prior year bills? It's a fairly small amount, around $3,400 for all the bills.
You don't anticipate any changes?
We do not.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? I'll take a motion.
I would recommend that we not make a motion on that because we don't have funding sources yet.
You have those, right?
Right, but do you want it in the motion, or?
Well,
I can tell you-
usually our recommendation includes the funding sources.
I think Carol has, for the articles ready to be
I
acted on.
can try to
we
wing
do.
it.
Do you have it on my sheet here?
Oh, yeah. All right.
They're all on the sheet.
Let me see. I
You have-
filed that
you have
away.
the cheat sheet.
Which sheet is that,
sheet is
Carol?
The one we don't have.
She gave me my special
Fill it
sheet.
out on-
I actually probably do have it, it's in my computer.
Well, how
All
did
right.
you get so special?
I just gave it to her.
So let me see. I gotta compare it to what's here. So,
John,
Mr. Chair.
would you audit over her shoulder? If she reads a number off wrong, just give her the elbow. That's how this works. Thank you.
Do you have the right one?
So we're looking
I wouldn't
here.
get anything unless Carol gave it.
Oh, all right.
Here it
I
tells
agree
you
with
what-
that.
If that sheet is slightly off, she might have done it.
Yeah,
last
see,
minute.
I mean, really.
Regard anything written in crayon on that one?
Should be, right?
Yes, 25, 75, 18.
Let's see.
18.
See?
She doesn't want the wrong sheet getting out there.
That's right.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Garzal.
I move that we recommend approval of Article 1 in the amount of $3,464.51, of which $3,427.19 would be from free cash, $18.66 would come from sewer enterprise funds, and $18.66 would come from water enterprise funds.
Carol. I don't have those numbers on this sheet.
It's in the second part.
No, it's not.
I second that.
Thank you, it is.
I second.
I had more time with it.
Okay.
Second, Mr. Chair.
I'll second, since I have the sheet.
Oh.
Thank you. Sorry. It's been moved and seconded to vote to approve Article 1 in the amounts read by Ms. Garzon. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? And no abstentions. Deirdre, did you get that?
You know what, I did need to fill out this 150.
You're muted. Okay.
Some of it has come from more.
It actually, it does on top of the sheet, but on the bottom, there's no,
So the top of the sheet is
on the-
from Fall Town Meeting,
yeah, that's the mistake I made up front, so,
and the bottom is the Springtown Meeting articles.
yep. And Deirdre, we'll make sure you have the sheet when you do minutes.
If we made a
of course.
mistake, we can amend the motion.
Correct, correct.
And,
Okay, so,
Mr. Chairman,
Article
just-
1.
Yeah, just, oh. Are you ready to move to Article 2?
We are ready to move to
Okay.
Article 2.
Oh, that was good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are recommending that the Finance Committee defer recommendations on Article 2. We
Okay.
do expect to have that motion to the Finance Committee within the next week, week and a half. We expect to have virtually all the remainder of the motions to you by tomorrow. But that one, we need a little more time to make sure we have the numbers right for the transfers going into the town meeting.
Okay.
Article 3, as you mentioned, I think you were holding off. We just went through the budget.
Yes.
Article 4, just a note there, originally we had $100,000 listed there, but we added $15,000. Those would be funds that would be from the enterprise funds related to the AFSCME Council 93, which is one of the DPW union. So it's a total of $115,000 that we'd like to set aside. We don't know if we'll use this full amount, but we feel necessary to set it aside as we go into union negotiations.
In summary, you don't think we think we are ready? We could potentially discuss and vote and
Yes,
discuss and
yes, I
vote?
see no reason to hold this. I don't expect to be able to provide any additional information to the committee between now and the town meeting in regards to that article.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Garzon.
I move that we recommend approval of Article 4 in the amount of $115,000, of which $100,000 would come from free cash, $5,100 would come from sewer enterprise funds, 6,400 would come from water enterprise funds, and 3,500 would come from stormwater enterprise funds.
3,400 from
Ms. Darko?
stormwater? How much?
Would you repeat that,
35.
please?
3,500, thank you.
It's 51, 64, and 35. So 5,100 from sewer, 6,400 from water, and 3,500 from stormwater.
I'll take a second. Second. It's been moved and seconded that the committee vote to approve Article 4 for raise and appropriate funds in the amount of $115,000, $100,000 from free cash, $5,100 from sewer, $6,400 from water, $3,500 from the stormwater fund, for contract costs. Discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Underhill.
I do have a question for Mr. Kaczynski on this. If
Go ahead.
the $115,000, you work your magic with the unions and you don't need it, this will return to the general funds? if
It
unused?
would, it would. What would happen
Or
is
to the
we'd
funds that
have.
they were sourced from?
Yeah, it would return back to free cash, if we didn't need the full amount.
Okay, thank you.
You know, to the appropriate funding source.
Right, percentage-wise.
Yeah.
I'd ask if it's
Thank you.
inclusive of the enterprise fund. Quick question, and then I apologize for not knowing. These particular funds, the sewer, the water, and the stormwater, they're inclusive of the enterprise fund?
Right, they'd be on the retained earnings that the enterprise funds currently have. That's where that funding would come from.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay, any further questions?
Did that help?
Okay, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve Article 4, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? And no abstentions. 8-0, or excuse me, 9-0. I just discounted myself. Deirdre? Okay, Article 5, Mr. Kaczynski.
You want to take these three? 'Cause I don't have numbers.
Oh, we don't have the numbers.
Okay.
Right available.
Nope,
so these
understand.
have to be on Monday.
So we'll defer 5, 6, and 7.
Yep.
And would we defer 8?
Mr. Chair, on consent Article 8, just to summarize the specific portion having to do with item 1. And I think, I don't know if you have the chart here, but the select board is putting forward a 2% increase for the personnel plan for employees, which matches the increase that was approved for the police union. Also within that would be the addition of the assistant town administrator position would need to be added in there because that position is not within any of the union contracts. And there are a few other changes to that, so I'd recommend probably best to hold off on that one until Monday. And we'll tomorrow, probably with the same time you receive the motions, we'll send you the breakdown of the changes to the personnel plan that are being proposed.
All right, as long as, it's absolutely critical at this point that if we defer something, we know why we're deferring it, and somebody's taking a to-do,
Yeah,
you know,
we'll receive
an action
that-
item.
We'll receive that from my office.
Yep.
We'll go out to the committee.
Okay, so that gets us to
Article 9.
Article 9. We are,
Article 9, Mr. Chairman, is simply the Community Preservation Commission has approved funding of $21,035.16 towards the soundproofing for the pickleball tennis courts. I think that was briefly discussed earlier this evening by
it was mentioned,
Barry.
Mr. Barry, that's right.
But
And
there's-
so the funding source would be CPC?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
But there's also an additional monies for the trees. So
Well,
that's
actually, there's no
coming from-
additional monies. What it would be is, well, there is, but it's,
That's from the tree fund.
we have a tree fund already in place, which would fund some trees and landscaping along that same side of the fence to help dissipate sound, which would help the sound barrier as well. So that doesn't need any additional appropriation, but it's just a note.
Is that something, though, that the town needs to know, though, the townspeople? Because it was under my impression that, I have that article.
Yes.
And there's approximately between $12,000 and $13,000 cost to, and the tree warden approved to use these specific trees and landscaping for additional soundproofing, but should we not mention that in the?
You certainly could mention it as
Could mention it
as
in
part of
the
the
in the
project.
discussion.
In the discussion?
Discussion, right.
Okay.
It's not
all
part of
right.
the appropriation, but it's part of the
No, but
project.
it's part of the
Yes.
project, and
That's
it's already,
correct.
the money's already been there, is there, and the.
It was a donation through the planning board
A donate,
account.
okay.
My favorite
and
tree account.
The planning board would ultimately
They
have to approve it.
did have to approve it.
Yes.
Then
Joyce, I'll
which I
take an article, excuse me, I'll take an article. I'll take a motion, please. Putting you on the spot, because this is your article.
I move that we approve this article to appropriate $21,035.16 that the Community Preservation Open Space Recreation Funds for soundproofing of the pickle and tennis courts.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve $21,035.16 from CPC dollars for soundproofing at the pickleball courts. Discussion.
I
All
already
those,
did.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay, Article 10.
Article 10, Mr. Chairman, on this item, I believe this is another one involving the Community Preservation Commission. I believe they've delayed their vote on this until the end of April. We have a process where we've put out an RFP to find out the cost of this project, and the Community Preservation Commission has held off on their vote whether or not to approve funding for this based on the RFP, so.
Do you foresee that this will either get dismissed or that we would recommend at town meeting?
Yes, I would recommend a deferment on this article based on the fact that, on your recommendation, based on the fact that we don't know if the CPC is going to recommend it.
Okay.
And if it's not, there's no other funding available at this time.
Okay. All right, any more questions or comments on that? Okay, next.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, this was briefly discussed earlier, $16,900 from the Community Preservation Commission for the Okra Farm Trail Improvement Project.
We're gonna, as previously discussed, we'll defer that one. Just save you the description. And Mr. Stedman, can you help us with that one
Yeah.
for next week?
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Thank you.
They've got, yeah, I'll
Okay.
see.
Number 12?
Number 12, this is, as the Finance Director mentioned earlier, this is an item that's not required every year, so therefore it's remaining as an article, and it is on a fairly regular basis. It does show up in our warrant for $17,800 for the FY23 recertification process. So this is a work done through the assessor's office, and they have a consultant that assists them with that work.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Garzon?
I recommend that we approve Article 12 in the amount of $17,800 for the Board of Assessors recertification process to come from free cash.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to vote to approve the appropriation of $17,800 from free cash for the, in order to conduct the FY23 recertification process for the assessor's office. Discussion. My question is, just to clarify that this is not one of the items that got moved to their budget, because I thought there was an assessor plus up.
Right, so that's a yearly annual.
This is the 5-year.
This is the 5-year, so
Thank you.
we funded the first half of it last year, and this is the second half. So DOR comes in and recertifies everything within the assessing office.
Thank you. Any more comments and questions? All those in favor of approval of Article 12 as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? 9-0. Article 13, Mr. Kaczynski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Article 13 has had some
Capital
changes to
items.
it. As you'll see, the total funding going towards capital is $264,095. This is from both general fund and enterprise funds. There was an item removed, that was the school skid steer. The select board had inquired of the school whether it was a higher priority to have the additional $61,000 towards the school budget to handle the special ed costs, or whether they'd prefer to have the skid steer remain. They opted to have the additional funds in their budget to handle the sped costs. So this has been reduced accordingly. And so these do represent the highest level projects that fit within the budget restrictions. The message board did come out on the lower end, but because of the relatively low cost of that, it did fit within the budget parameters where the other projects did not. So I'll be happy to answer any questions on these particular items. Carol, do you have the breakdown of the water and sewer and stormwater costs? Yes. So, there you go.
So the current breakdown would be 169,209 from free cash. And then it would be $31,629 from the water enterprise and the sewer enterprise. So those two would be the same amount. And then $31,628 from stormwater.
Attention to detail, very good.
I figured, but I wanted to get it so it added up correctly.
I didn't want to do 75 cents, 75 cents.
I hear you. Yeah, I guess it'd be a bit much when you're doing a motion in town meeting too, with the cents.
They know we're being exact, though,
Yeah.
right?
My recommendation would be to wait on this because we, just kind of had our budget overview and just got kind of the free cash breakdowns.
I would like to, I agree with you, but I would like to discuss it now, in the sense that, not necessarily leading up to a vote, but I would like for us to have the opportunity to look at what, from the list that Mr. Barry presented to what the select board has come down to, for us to give our opinion on it. And we've done this in the past, where we've given our opinion on capital items, and the select board has taken our advice in some cases, and in some cases not, and that's fine. I just think that that's how the process should work. I'll start by just saying that I agree with the concept that, just because something is in the lower tier of priorities, we ought to spend to the available, unless there are other compelling needs, we ought to spend to what's available, to that free cash, bogey or target. So there's no reason to not buy a message board. One of the things that we discussed is, we didn't kick out any of the projects, and disqualify projects that were given to us. There are some compelling needs, including the message board. So I don't have a problem with that being included, even though it's of the lower priority. The police radio console and updates and the radio backup, generators, I think that those are also compelling needs. I would like to, and I plan to ask this, because I don't remember the answer, but I would like to know if this is an enhancement of a capability, or is this a replacement of a capability that's going away? And I don't particularly remember that answer. We discussed these particular projects weeks and weeks, months ago, so I need to go back. Mr. Germain?
If you don't mind.
You need a mic?
I do mine unless you're at the...
Pete Germain, Chair of the Select Board. The existing systems are old and out of date. They cannot be repaired any longer, and they do in fact pose a big problem for both police and fire. So as a result, we are facing an immediate concern and partially a danger to our own public safety officials. So we need to get these replaced as quickly as possible. Spare parts are no longer available. There is no way to repair them any longer. And this would allow them to mesh into existing systems in other towns, which is going to be very important in the future if there's any form of consolidation of resources, which is under investigation at this point, or under discussion, I should say. Is that fair?
Thank you. Is there a question or a comment in the back? Okay, thought I saw a hand move. Sarah, Ms. Reyes.
I just have a quick question on the message board. I know that the Lions were raising money to try to buy a message board for the DPW. Do we know what happened with that, or?
I think the Lions project is to put a sign in front of the Veterans Memorial Building.
Okay.
This is a movable message board that you can hook onto the back of a truck and drive it and put it in different locations around town if you want to put a note of a water break or flooding in an area or road work. They can take it, anywhere in town that they need to.
This is in addition to the one that the police station has,
The
right?
police do have one, but it doesn't, it has its problems, and it's out to the shop quite a bit. So it's common for towns to have 3, 4, 5, or more of these. We have one. It certainly, I think, is a need to have more than the one. Again, this is split between the DPW and each of the enterprises. So, and the director feels strongly that we need that capability to have this other unit available.
I'll just ask a general question. I'm curious as to what the school's workaround is for apparently not receiving funding for their server request.
You're talking about the 112,000?
Yes.
Oh, was
I think it was 100,000 originally, and maybe.
Yeah, I think it went up to 100, yeah, it went up a little bit. I think they will be seeking that funding at the fall town meeting. I believe currently they've indicated that their current system is no longer supported after next May. I'm not a computer expert, so I can't tell you what options that would leave them with, but I think their hope is to have it funded at the fall town meeting so that they can have something in place prior to next May. There has been discussions about other options, including cloud-based options, but I don't think any other decisions have been made along those lines right now.
Okay. And we also just, in the general comment, we discussed with them during capital planning committee meetings was to perhaps pursue extended warranties, or actually I think that was a comment made by the select board, but also discussed during CPC. So I don't sense that this is, potentially causing anything catastrophic for them. Certainly, most replacements of computer systems and servers go on a 7-year, more or less, industry standard, but theoretical replacement schedule. It's not like the thing turns into a pumpkin come May, but it certainly would be prudent to have a maintenance plan in place if something's expiring. So I would just ask you all to look at the back page of Mr. Barry's report that he gave us, because it basically tells you what is not recommended for funding, what's being left off. The sidewalk design road repair is not being left off. It's actually in a separate article, if I remember.
Article 15.
Yep.
And Mr. Chair,
Ms. Garzon.
I would also like to point out that we do not have to spend every dollar of free cash, at town meeting. That,
Shocking.
It rolls over. It doesn't go away. It can roll over to the next town meeting and, or the next fiscal year, not necessarily the next town meeting. There's a lag, but whatever we don't spend today, we have tomorrow to spend. So that is another option as well. If we decide that one of these items we would not recommend funding of based on our criteria, that can roll over to another fiscal year.
Right. It's a valid comment. The only thing I would add on to that is that a lot of times, as we remember last year from the fire trucks that were funded with free cash, there was like a 500-day lead time on some of those items. Now, I don't think that's the case here, but you have to consider the lead time and the need for, say, a new piece of snow removal equipment, for instance. Is anybody proposing, are you proposing taking one of these off?
At this time, I'm not, but I want to have a more comprehensive view of our cash position,
Yep.
As well as stabilization. And, we have a lot of funding needs and not a big pot to work with,
Right.
so.
Yeah, it would be wise to remember that the pot was bigger. We had to bridge a gap for the school, and through unforeseen circumstances, that took away a lot from the resources that could be available for something else. Perhaps not even spending, perhaps saving. So, okay.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Garzon.
was there discussion of the $160,000 for sidewalk design and road repair? I know I missed a couple of meetings, and I might have missed that part.
It's coming up.
Article 16.
No,
Right,
she
but
means
was there
during
actually
meetings.
discussion within one of our meetings about that? From the
Yes.
DPW or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been discussed through, I don't remember exactly, I've heard it in multiple meetings, including some select board meetings that I had the privilege to attend. So,
Okay, I will look back through notes.
okay.
I have one
Mr.
question.
Stedman, yep.
So all this will be funded by free cash or cash from the enterprise funds. None of them will be leased or financed by debt. Is
These are
that
all
correct?
purchases.
Thank you.
And I assume that there would be a split out to the enterprise funds on the Silverado with plow?
Yes, all three DPW items are split out.
Right.
The plow, the Chevy Silverado, the skid steer, and the message board.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so unless there's any more comments or questions, we'll just move on to the next article, but I'm happy to go on for another few minutes of questions. Okay, next article.
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Please.
Article 14, this has to do with the need based on the bids we received to increase the debt authorization, an additional $500,000 for the DeAngelis Water Treatment Plant for PFAS filtration, which would bring it up to a total of $6.1 million for the project.
And this comes from where?
Mr. Stedman, would you
Yes, sir.
care to make a motion?
Yes, I move we recommend for approval Article 14 to increase the funding for the PFAS treatment plant from $5.6 to $6.1 million, or an additional $500,000 to be funded by debt.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to vote to approve Article 14 to appropriate $500,000 through debt for contingency funds for construction of the DeAngelis Water Treatment Plant to address PFAS levels at wells 1 and 2. Discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay? Okay, thank you. Article 15,
What was the funding source for that, Mr. Chair? I just heard
Thank
debt.
debt.
Borrowing.
Sorry. Wrong
It's the same
word.
thing. Except in municipal speak.
So taxes.
Article 15, Mr. Chairman, this is for $160,000 for the design and construction of sidewalks and roads. As was discussed earlier, there was some debate with the select board as to whether this should be more appropriate in the DPW operating budget or here. It was ultimately decided that based, at least for now, it should be located within the, as a warrant article, just so the public is fully aware of the efforts being made to move forward with this work. as well as it would allow some flexibility of the DPW to span fiscal years if necessary, to be able to properly use these funds.
Okay. Take a motion?
Oh, Mr. Chair, I'm just curious why 4% wasn't added to the fund last year's amount. Everything seems to have risen 4% except that amount.
Well, this is-
Perhaps it would have had much of the free cash not gone to pay for sped or others, because this is coming from free cash.
That's correct. Yeah, and
Say the
basically.
same about anything else that
True.
was 4%, Mr. Chair.
True.
You can just imagine that the costs have gone up probably 30% on what you're going to get last year, and I'm just really saddened that the powers that be didn't think of that when they came to this amount. And then also, Mr. Chair, for many years, committees were hoping to get a line item in the operating budget to show people also that it was going to be a yearly item. Now it's taken out, and it makes some people nervous that the amount will change, or it has to be blessed this way. And it just for information, I mean, it's coming one way or the other, but just...
I am open to making recommendations to balance Articles 16 and 15 if you think that, if you share my opinion that we are spending adequate dollars on trees. We'll never spend enough on trees, and we'll never spend enough on roads. You look at the roads in this town, and I think the priority is there, my personal opinion. If you share my opinion, perhaps we should vote to make a recommendation to the Select Board to balance the funds that are presented here between Article 15 and 16, and perhaps there are others. I mean, we could make a recommendation to the Select Board to recraft the entire budget. I'm not in favor of that, but I think when I look at this, and I've been kind of on the soapbox for a couple of cycles now, that we've spent adequate money on tree removal and maintenance, and not enough on sidewalks and roads. If you share my opinion, then perhaps we should discuss it more and make a recommendation to the Select Board. We can't change this, but we can recommend to the Select Board, and now would probably be the last opportunity to do it, other than somebody, making a motion to modify the motions to amend at town meeting. I think
Just
the
a
time to
point-
do it is now. Go ahead.
Just a point of information. If these line items are included in the budget, the operating budget, if the monies aren't spent when the budget, at the end of the year, it would roll to free cash. It would go into, it doesn't come back. You can't roll it over. In an article, if the money is in an article, then it can be rolled over year to year.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just to answer to that, the DPW director stated on Monday that monies that he will lose at the end of the year are what he spends first. The Chapter 90 funds can be rolled over, which he does on a regular basis to accumulate a large project. But whatever's given at town meeting, he gets rid of first.
In budget, in the
Right.
budget line, right?
Budget. Mr. Chair, this is a big number. I think the $160,000 is well spent. If you don't design it, you'll never do it. But I think we should wait on this until we get an updated free cash for Article 15.
It is included in free cash.
This is a free cash item.
Right, it is a free cash.
It is.
Have our whole picture.
The total of free cash.
Mr.
I don't-
Chair, I'm
I
just
don't think
hearing-
it's necessary.
I'm hearing that people might be at town meeting and requesting a raise in this, or a better explanation as to why it wasn't raised when it's the number one issue to the people.
Well, I don't dispute that. In fact, I'm in favor of raising it now. I've always been in favor of raising it.
Make a motion.
I don't need to. I need to know, I'm not going to, and my personal opinion doesn't override anything that we do as a committee, so that's why I would have the discussion. Mr. Jermaine, you've raised your hand.
I just want to clarify something. Are you asking, should it be put in as a line item in the
No,
budget?
no, I'm personally not. It's fine here. I just think
That's
that.
fine. That's what I wanted to make sure.
If, I'm responding to a comment that was made that there's not enough money being allocated for sidewalks and roads, and I happen to agree with that. But I also am I'm pragmatist. I know that there's only so much money to go around, so I'm looking at what's being proposed and saying that if there's an opportunity to reallocate some of the funding that's proposed, it's staring us in the face, in my opinion, Article 15 and Article 16. We have spent, I don't know what the tally is on the tree budget for the last several budget cycles, over $160,000 on trees. And we continue to do so, and I know that, I mean, I heard Mr. McKay say that that budget line is likely going to go down. When I drive Route 109, you know, on the west end of town, headed into Medway, and countless other streets, I believe that the priority is with the roads and not the trees. The trees are not falling down around us. I fail to see it. And I'm not omniscient, you know. I'm just giving you my perspective, and I think that our priority should be skewed higher toward roads than it is trees.
I will say, for what it's worth, that the select board has talked over both of these, and the reason we went forward with the trees was at the request of the tree warden, because his recommendation was we are still recovering from, and I don't know what the disease was, but the disease that killed quite a number of trees in the area. And although we agree that he's done quite a good amount of work with the DPW and NSTAR, the reality is they were looking for final, trying to clean up the rest of it. He felt there were a number of trees that could cause a public problem, and it was for that reason we went along. I would suggest that if you want to come and attend, or if you can, send someone to attend the meeting on Monday, it's perfectly legitimate to open it for further discussion.
I understand, and I just want to make sure people realize I applaud the tree warden for advocating for his program. He's done a fine job, and you know, as far as I know, there hasn't been significant property damage, or you know, nobody's gotten hurt from trees falling in the roads during major storms, and God knows we've had enough of those over the last several years. Again, I'm not faulting, and I appreciate that the town and the select board has put money towards sidewalks, which I've been, again, rallying for. So my proposal would be that we would reduce the tree line to $15,000 to $20,000 and put those additional funds towards roads and sidewalks.
Mr. Chair.
And not that we would change the motion, but that we would communicate that officially to the select board and let them do it. It's their warrant, it's not ours. Mr. Lohr.
Is it possible to combine these two articles? I think to your point, so let's say, for example, you only need $40,000 in tree repair, and then reallocate that $10,000 over to streets and sidewalks? Is that what you're going towards, as an example?
As an example, yes. I would reduce the tree line, Article 16, down to 15 or 20,000, and I would move 25 to 30,000 up to Article 15, making it 190,000.
So this is the new guy talking. So is it possible to reword this so that it says
Either or.
the DPW director has the ability to allocate funds either to roads and sidewalks and trees based on his discretion up to the maximum limit of 160 for each category?
I'm not sure, but I wouldn't advocate for that. At this point, I would just say, let's communicate as the Finance Committee our recommendation and let them rewrite the articles.
Understood.
If they agree with us. And ultimately, what I'm looking for is for you to agree with me.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Stedman.
Okay.
We're getting there.
We were told earlier tonight that there's $31,500 approximately left in the tree fund. Therefore, I think you're on the right track. I would not be that aggressive in cutting the tree budget. I would make it 30,000 instead of 50. That also sends a message, because I think one way or another, the tree warden's gotten everything he's asked for from town meetings. So I would recommend that we we make that number 30, recommend to the select board that they change that to 30,000.
Yeah.
Going along with putting that money in the sidewalks, should there be free cash, is up to them, but yeah, that's where I come from on this.
Well, I'm not an all or none guy, so I appreciate your proposal. Ms. Boyardi?
There was one thing that was mentioned, though, by the, Mr. McKay, and I mean, I respect what you're asking for, and I do see that there's $31,000 still available, but what he did say was there's another disease coming forward, and if they can eliminate the problem, I mean, maybe this time it's the full 81,000 that they have, so that they can address all the severities, address the possible disease, the upcoming disease, and then going forward, next, I know it's like the police chief coming in and asking for the cars all the time, but he has to, do it. Maybe next, for the fall time, is when the tree warden comes for asking for additional, that's when we say no to it and put it towards the sidewalks and streets.
Ms. McGinnis?
Oh, thank you. I think
I know
we have
that's
to.
not what you wanted to hear.
I know, I was going to allude back to my
Want
friend
everybody
here.
to have their moment?
We have to remember that in emergencies, if a tree falls, the DPW has to pay overtime. This is the one item that the town is finally proactive on. And let me remind you, it's $7,500 a day for the machine, okay? So $30,000, you're going to get 4 days from it, 5 days from it. It's $550 a day for stump removal. If you've seen all the stumps on Ridge Street, and I know the town administrator, how many complaints you've received, that the trees were cut down, yet nothing was removed, branches, everything. So individuals are volunteering to do that. And it sounds like a lot of money with, for $50,000, but again, you're getting 1 week's worth of work. And I
Kathy?
would like to see that 16 stay the same, but I would like to see at least a $50,000, $60,000 increase in Article 15.
From where? That's
From the assistant town administrator or something, not for, it's out there. But,
Okay.
I'm prioritizing from what I hear out in the public, that the road, forget 109, just pulling into this building, Park Street. And also, I would like to say that the town warden gets what he wants at town meeting because the people that are there know that that's a need. So they're going to advocate and get up and cheer and everything. So just keep that in mind when it seems like a lot of money, 50,000, but when you've got one machine for 7,500 a day, it doesn't get you much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Underhill?
I agree mostly with Ms. McGinnis here. I think before we raid the money for the tree warden, we should find out what safety concerns he has and what's his bare bones budget. We're throwing arbitrary numbers around, saying 30,000, but we don't know, he knows what trees are gonna fall, what trees are gonna pose a risk to our citizens. I want sidewalks as much as anyone. I don't have any sidewalks on my street, but a sidewalk never fell over and killed someone. I mean, a sidewalk never fell over and knocked down a power line. We should hear from the tree warden what his bare bones request. Maybe he doesn't need 50,000, maybe he needs 30,000, but we need to hear it.
Unfortunately, we won't. We won't hear from the tree warden because he's not available. That's why Mr. McKay gave the presentation.
Perhaps we can ask
We
him
have-
to write a letter for us, though, to give us an explanation.
He's, okay, I understand. And if nobody is willing to make a motion, we're going to move on, and maybe we'll discuss it next week. So we're going to go by Article 15 and Article 16, and that brings us to Article 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Article 17, again, this was discussed briefly earlier this evening. This is simply voting to authorize the lease purchase for computers for the schools in the amount of up to $69,900. The actual appropriation would be within their operating budget. This is actually the authority to enter into a lease.
Okay. Can I have a motion from,
But
Who's
I
got
still
Article
don't
17?
understand where the money's coming from.
there is no money being appropriated by this article.
It's just. It's already included in their operating
In
budget.
the school budget.
In the school budget.
Okay.
How does this relate to the 112,000 that was in the capital budget?
It's different. This is
Okay.
a different,
That's a server versus
Yeah.
Okay.
These are
that's
teacher
okay.
laptops.
laptops for the students or faculty or staff. Ms. Reyes, Ms. Garzon, Ms. Reyes, Ms. Reyes, please. Would you make a motion?
I make a motion to approve Article 17 for the town to authorize the lease purchase of the computers for the Millis schools. That is already, funding is already coming out of the school budget in the amount of $69,900.
Second.
And I would just amend, so it's been moved and seconded, I would just amend to say that the money is not already coming out, but that the motion is to authorize the town to enter into leases. Funding would be appropriated under Article 3, the operating budget. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor to approve the authorization for the town to enter into lease purchase for computers for the middle schools in the amount of $69,900, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes 9-0. Article 18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Article 18, along the same vein, this is to authorize the town to enter into a lease purchase agreement for 2 new police cruisers. The full cost of the lease purchase is $104,000. And the actual funding to pay for the leases would be in the police budget under Article 3.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Reyes.
I make a motion to approve Article 18 to see if the town will approve, will authorize the funding of the lease purchase of 2 police cruisers in the total amount of $104,000. Which funding is included in Article 3.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to vote to approve the creation or the authorization for the town to enter into leases for purchase of 2 police cruisers in the sum of $104,000 to be funded out of operating funds. Discussion.
Does anybody remember what the lead time is on these cruisers, just out of curiosity?
I
don't know.
I do not.
You might want to know that for the meeting, Sarah.
I think he had mentioned it when he came, but so I'll
Right.
look back, and if not, I will send an email.
You may, just while we're talking about other items that could be included during discussion, that's also that typically the outfitting of all the equipment that goes into a police cruiser is funded by grant. Radios, computers, racks for weapons, cages for dog, I mean, I don't know, we don't even have a dog in town, but all that stuff is extra over and above the purchase of the vehicle, and is usually funded via grant dollars that the chief works hard to get, so.
The only thing that he can't get grants for is the actual cruisers.
Okay.
Right.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes 9-0. Article 19.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Article 19 is the establishment of a town administrator bylaw. I think the committee has discussed that at length. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the Finance Committee might have in regards to that article.
Okay, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to defer on the charter amendment articles, so that would be in the general bylaw, so that would be 19 through 22. We may come back to 23 and 24 tonight We may come back to 26, 27, 28 tonight, and I would like to go to Article 29. Ms. Rosenfeld?
So you said you were going to defer. Are you going to talk about 19 at all, ever?
I certainly am, and if I don't do it tonight, I will do it on Monday.
Okay, great.
Mr. Kaczynski, Article 29.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Articles, these are both, Articles 29 and 30 are petition articles, and they seek to create an elected board of water and sewer commissioners. And one is through, I believe, would be a petitioning of the state legislature for a special act to accomplish that. And Article 30 would be an amendment to the general bylaws to outline in detail the powers and duties of the water and sewer commissioners.
Correction, Mr. Chair. This will be by ballot if it is two-thirds successful at town meeting, not by special
Yes, that's correct.
government approval.
That is correct.
Okay.
It would merely require prior approval of a majority of the voters at an annual town election.
Okay. Part of the reason that I am passing some of the articles in our, that we need to discuss and to vote on is because I want to make sure that we have opportunity to also discuss these articles. I know that Mr. Germain would like to make some comments. I'm not sure if anybody else wants to make some comments. Next week, our meeting is on Monday, so we have concurrent meetings. Mr. Germain.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, if I could just take 2 minutes.
Go ahead.
I do have, I don't plan to get deeply involved into the debate on this issue. However, I have had some experience in working with an elected water and sewer commission. I was, prior to coming to Millis, I did work in the town of Douglas for 13 years, where they have had an elected water and sewer commission, I believe for over 40 years, for their water and sewer operations. Certainly, I had a lot of experience there working with both the select board, or Board of Selectmen in Douglas, and the Water and Sewer Commission. I just wanted to let the Finance Committee know that I did have some issues there in dealing with the Water and Sewer Commission, mostly because oftentimes there was gridlock between the Board of Selectmen and the Water and Sewer Commission over a lot of issues in the community. Obviously, the Water and Sewer Commission was focused mostly on issues affecting the water and sewer system, the budgets involving the water and sewer system, and the ratepayers, which is their responsibility. That often came into conflict with the broader goals of the Board of Selectmen and the community. There were a lot of arguments between the boards, and actually I had a difficulty on getting the boards to even sit together in a room during most of the time I was there. So I would just lay that out as a caution, something to think about, because a lot of the work involved with water and sewer is deeply embedded in some of the broader goals of the community, economic development, other projects that really go hand in hand with the different roles of the Select Board and the Water and Sewer Commission. Every community is different. Every community has their different needs, their different characters. I did reach out to a number of area managers just to get some feedback because my experience was mostly limited to Douglas, so I wanted to find out what other communities' experiences have been. I did get feedback from about a dozen different managers, most of whom had concerns or had some negative experiences either in the community they were in or in prior work they did. having to do with similar issues. And certainly it's a more democratic approach, but that can also lead to a flattening of the decision-making and the policies, which can make it more difficult to move a community forward. So I just offer that. I don't intend to get involved in the debate. That's something that this committee and the town meeting will have to address. But I just thought it was important for me to pass on my experiences and some of my concerns. And again, like I said, every community is different, has different experiences, but just wanted to put that out there.
Okay.
So,
Thank you,
thank
Mr.
you for
Jermaine.
the time.
May I ask for a follow-up, please, before?
Sure. Go ahead.
Mr. Kaczynski mentions a lot of times about concerns that he has and arguments. Could you specify, please, what your concerns and arguments were? Hearing about an elected water and sewer commission who would be dedicated solely to the water and user ratepayers?
Right. My concern would be that their focus would be purely on the ratepayers and not for the broader goals of the community, and sometimes those are enmeshed together. So I'm just talking about my experiences. And in Douglas, the experience is that there were a lot of initiatives that the Board of Selectmen there wanted to move forward with that involved water and sewer, involved economic development, involved planning, building new water and sewer lines to encourage development within the community. And there was a difference in philosophies between the Water and Sewer Board and the Select Board. And that really made things stagnate. We weren't able to move a lot of things forward. Now, some people may have liked that in the community, that things really didn't change as much because the Water and Sewer Commission, their primary focus was on, the best interest of the water and sewer ratepayers in their mind, and I appreciate that. But it did create some issues with the town being able to move forward with certain projects.
I've got a
May I
follow-up
please
question.
okay.
Let me ask a question. Along those lines, to both of your questions, I'm curious as to what are the mechanics. It's, there, a lot goes into setting the rates. It's the expenditures and the revenue, but it's also the projects. So when a town meeting would happen in Douglas and there was a water and sewer issue, how did the select board retain the authority to put articles on the warrant, or was that authority shared with the select board?
There really wasn't that much that the Board of Selectmen got directly involved in with that. I mean, the Water and Sewer Commission did set their own rates.
But didn't debt for projects affect the rates? So if there was a...
So they did put forward, and there weren't many projects put forward when I was there, large water and sewer projects. Most of the expansion in Douglas during that time was done by private developers who paid for their, for the expansion of water and sewer lines and got their approvals through the Water and Sewer Commission.
If they needed a PFAS plant, whose responsibility would that be to get it onto the warrant?
Well, the Water and Sewer Commission would have to request that an article be put, the Board of Selectmen will put the article on the warrant. Okay. And usually the Board of Selectmen, like in most towns, if a board or committee wants something on the warrant, unless it's something really out in left field, they're going to approve it. And they did. And there really wasn't an issue on rate setting. There was no issues there. The issues tended to surround whenever there was any broader town initiatives. We did a lot of work in economic development when I was there, and again, there were just different philosophies on the expansion of the project. The Water and Sewer Commissioners would not approve any project that would place any burden on the water and sewer users unless there was some other outside source of funding. So that created a different vision between the town leaders and the water sewer commissioners on moving things forward.
Okay.
When Mr. Kaczynski stated about there were issues regarding what back in his town, the selectmen wanted to do regarding water and sewer lines, those will be taken out of the responsibility of the select board. That is what you have an elected Water and Sewer Commission who will hire an engineer, who will, and the debt for projects now is paid for by the Water and Sewer Commission. So I haven't heard any concerns, legitimate concerns from our town administrator regarding this. All I have heard, and if you would share, or if it was private conversations, who you spoke to, the town administrators that didn't have good luck with them, because I can cross my heart and hope to die. I haven't heard from one town administrator that doesn't appreciate this, because a lot of this work is taken away from him and put it on specialists. That's all they want to do if they run for Water and Sewer Commission. They want to oversee the proper installation and design, and I could say that people would join an economic development program. I don't really see how often that those groups meet with the select board on issues, because there isn't time. And I feel badly, because I think people are offended that something's being taken away from them, Mr. Chair, when it's just leaving them to take care of other things.
We are not voting on this tonight, so there's plenty of time for discussion. Mr. Germain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some handouts here. While I'm handing them out, what I'd like to point out is that Mr. Kaczynski has been very diplomatic. I have read each one of the 12 so far.
Mr. Germain,
Yes.
could you wait until you're at a mic? Thank
Can
you.
I ask who this is submitted by? Is this a vote of anyone, or?
We'll wait till you.
Okay.
I read all 12 of the replies that we've had so far. With the exception of one, they were categorically specific. Do not go down the road of having a water separate commission. You will tie the town in knots. You will make the job more difficult. Did you not hear?
Just
Okay.
a little closer. I don't think
Okay.
Deidre can hear unless you're right
Sorry,
into it.
Deidre. And overall, there was, with that one town exception, there isn't one that advocated for having such a committee. They say it's caused political problems in the town, it's caused dissension, it's caused power struggles, it's caused many problems that they didn't have previously. So what I've done, with, I must say, the able assistance of Mr. Kaczynski, is put together some concerns in this paper of what we see as a concern for moving forward with this particular issue. Overall, one could argue it seems reasonable at face value, but the reality is what we're hearing from 11 of 12 responses is much more negative than we had anticipated. And if for an interest perspective, the 12th one said it's because we've had people on the boards for over 10 years, the same people, elected and otherwise, the boards haven't changed, they've become familiar with what's going on, and so they've been able to work together. But it takes time, and it took a lot of effort. In a general sense, even there, they said, if you don't have the longevity of the individuals, this is probably not a good road to move down. If you look at what I've put together with our town administrator, basically there are several areas that we looked at with respect to the petition, as we heard stated the other night, that was put together by your cohort here, Ms. McGinnis.
Excuse me, I resent that cohort.
You're a member of the...
I know, I'm a member. I'm not a
Okay.
cohort.
All right, can we
look.
just we're not going to trade barbs.
I'm not
and-
trying to trade a barb. I'm
For
just...
both, can I have the floor, please?
I just want to move forward.
Exactly. Please.
Now, what we did do was try to put together a reasonable statement of what the concerns are as they face us. And these concerns are broken into 4 categories for you to evaluate. Of the 4 categories, we looked at each one to try to make sure that we understood what was stated in the paper that was presented and how these would be affected in terms of what the real conditions are. Unless you have specific questions, the point was that DPW chargebacks are in fact charged back on a basis of the administrative costs and some of the actual costs that take place. And these include the reallocation of resources that we have to have in the town based on licensing, but that may not be used to full extent at all times within the town. And it was this process for which we went out and actually hired an outside consultant to get us an overall good recommendation on how we should proceed. The net result was that we've had a presentation, and the result is that we are in fact making some corrections that we didn't have in the plan to begin with. We have a period of time that we're trying to work over. It ranges from 3 to 5 years to make some of these corrections and to make sure that the billing is adequate. We have reviewed all of this with the DPW director, with the town administrator, and with the consulting firm. The bottom line is that we have been led, we understand that the administrative costs and others have to be taken into account, but you can't qualify them on a minute-by-minute or hour-by-hour basis. If you need to have administrative staff available to handle billing, to handle calls, to handle all the other issues associated with running these facilities, you can't have them on an on-call basis. You have to be there, and therefore, their basic charges apply accordingly.
Mr. Jermaine?
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt you and just
Yes.
let you know, I'll give you 3 more minutes.
Oh,
We're gonna stop at 5 past.
That's
It's on
fair.
the clock behind me,
I'll
or behind you.
give me about 30-second warning.
Thank you.
Okay. On PFAS, we have a major concern that we're trying to address. We had asked that the original Enterprise Committee try to at least put together some information for the community, and most of the information that actually came out was in fact from DPW as a result. Our concern is that the committee did not come forth with any of the basic information that we needed, so it had to come from other sources. There isn't any question, we need to address that, and as a result, the Select Board, and myself in particular, have been in contact with our representatives to try to get additional funding. And in fact, as Mr. Kaczynski alluded to earlier, we had a meeting on the 23rd of March, he and I, with Jake Alkenclass, Representative Linsky, Representative Dooley, and Senator Roush, to try to get additional funding. Representative Linsky has in fact submitted a letter to their funding committee in the state and is hopeful that we will get additional funding for the PFAS. It's this kind of thing that the Select Board is capable of doing and has been doing, and we feel is better for the Select Board to do in the long term. Regarding sewer capacity that was raised, we have to meet the conditions primarily as set down by DEP and Charles River Pollution Control District. We have a contract with Charles River for a certain level of discharge that's permitted. We must not exceed that. If we do, they have the ability to not issue any more permits, regardless of the permits we've issued. If you build a home based on a permit we've issued and they choose not to issue a permit, even though it's connected to the sewer system, you cannot use that facility. So there are ways they could stop us. They know we're working toward it. Again, we need a committee, and that's where the Select Board has been working to make sure we understand the rules and that we move forward accordingly. And we've been coordinating with Charles River on that. The way in which the projections are made are as a result of guidelines from the DEP. We are not permitted, nor is Charles River permitted, to deviate from those guidelines in terms of how they make projections. And finally, you get to the amount of time. Unfortunately, yes, it does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of understanding on what these issues really are, but it is incumbent upon the board ultimately to understand these issues to a degree that they can be discussed appropriately with the community and transmitted appropriately to our elected officials to try to get funds or whatever support we can as needed within the Commonwealth. So I'm going to leave it at that. Our overall feeling is adding another committee in place would be a very bad idea for this community. It would potentially cause problems, and we do not advocate for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Due to time, we're going to move on to...
I think
No.
this is here.
Oh,
Sorry.
please,
You
Mr. Chair.
may, please, can I,
Let's not, we've already got one board that doesn't let people speak.
whenever you guys are done, I'll take the floor back. Brutus, I thought you were asking to speak on the Sewer Commission, Sewer and Water Commission. Thank you very much for coming. If you would like to speak on trees, please do. But I'm not taking any further discussion tonight on the Sewer and Water Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have we have staff here that are looking to break down cameras and things, so we've got to keep this
I'll be
quick.
real quick.
You have 90 seconds.
So I heard you guys were looking for me, and you guys scheduled a meeting when I have to do stuff for the city of Franklin. So I was at a council meeting tonight over there. That's why I
Thank you
couldn't
for
make it.
coming.
And then next week, I got texted they're slashing the budget, or you guys are. So I was on my way home. So I came over here, and and next week I'm at a
Brutus.
snow conference.
Brutus,
in
cut to the
Pittsburgh.
chase. Cut to the chase. The
So-
real question that people had,
Okay.
that hopefully you've heard, is what is your drop dead budget? That was one of the questions that was posed during our discussion. What is your drop dead? You absolutely have to have it in addition to the $31,000 that's still in the budget from the last appropriation.
Another 100,000? No, I know.
See?
No, it's realistic what we're doing. I think, and I really support the FinCom and the selectmen. They've gone through this, and I mean, 3 years ago, I started this program, and I know the appropriations of funds. And I think as people go around town, they've seen sad as it is, the trees we've taken down. I don't know if they've identified the two areas we're looking to do
Yes.
now.
Yep.
And the
Basically
thing-
from Holliston to Norfolk, or 115 all the way back to Norfolk.
Pretty much, yeah, the ends of towns that we need to do it. I think as people drive through there, they see it. It's money that has to be spent, and the way that we've been able to do in the past is if people were, there's got a lot of press, we have those specialized equipment that come in. It's not cheap to get those folks here, but I think you've seen the piles no one gets them down quicker, faster, and more efficient than they do. So actually, by appropriating this money to get them in here, it's saving money as much as you have to spend money to do it. So that's the major priority. I've talked to Jim quite a bit about it. There are certain areas of town that we still have to get more random act of trees. Now, this type of equipment isn't necessarily the most effective way to do that because they're not made to drive around town. Pick a tree here from one side of town to the other. So realistically, I'm looking at right now, based on a week's worth of work. Last year, we actually saved money, and we did because one day of it is for grinding, so we actually consolidated all the trees. I did with Franklin. I was able to save Franklin money and Millis. I know it's crazy, two towns working together, same money, but we did. And we actually ground on one day because they have to bring the piece of equipment in. So we were able to save money. I can't say that's going to happen this year. But yeah, I'm looking like 50 grand because that's what it costs to mobilize these folks to come in here. Because they have a mobilization fee. So you say, oh, just do reduce a day, but that mobilization cost goes across as many days as you have. So it's really worked out. The most cost-effective way is basically about a week's worth of work. So, and what they're billing out, I think it was $200, but the price has got to go up just because of fuel and everything else, and we haven't got this, and they are on the state bid list, so it's already been bid out.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
Sorry. Do you agree with Mr. McKay, and I hate to paraphrase and put words in people's mouth, but I asked him, I said, do you foresee the tree budget going down in future years because of the investment that we've made in the last few years? And he said yes.
I agree with that. Okay. And I think, we were I say here, as the tree warden, this area, I think Holliston, going over to Sherburne and Franklin, we were the epicenter of the three worst things that happened. We had the gypsy moth, with that really bad drought that also stressed the trees out, and we got the emerald ash borer. All the big ash trees. That's the ones gone, and that's the ones we were not initially.
Did you say big ash trees?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I think when we started, we focused on the ash trees because they're very brittle and they broke, and that's when we were over in the Baltimore Street area and did all those. And then most of these other ones, you can see they're more of an oak type tree. Oaks are stronger. They've died 4 years ago, but they're not falling the road. So there's a method to our madness, but we are getting there. And honestly, there's been good appropriations.
Questions?
So you will utilize the full 81,000 if you're given the 50,000?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the plan.
What would be the negative consequences if that were reduced, say, by $15,000?
The negative consequences, it's hard for me to say. I'm still going to focus on I always go after the biggest bang for the buck. And then, it's going to be, if we don't get to a certain area, you don't get a certain number of trees. Because there are certain trees we have to take down that this equipment won't do, that we still have to do normal everybody do. I can't predict, we're going to have another windstorm, a hurricane that comes through town that hits stuff that the DPW said do 365 days a year. So, but I was going to go in the marching orders, this is the appropriation to get the big stuff done, and then the maintenance keeps going. So it's hard for me to foresee that. But as you know, trees come down, they cause a lot of angst to folks in town, and they can cause a lot of problems. So it is an important thing. And the thing is, I wish I was sitting here, I will tell you, I'll come back in a couple of years, we actually can do like structural pruning instead of recovery. I'd love to do some work around town, a local resident took care of the trees out front here. We tried to do times to take care of some of the wonderful trees that we still have in town. We don't want to lose those either, so that's what we're trying to do.
Mr. Kenneregi, thank you for coming. We missed you previously, and we appreciate Mr. McKay coming in. I appreciate you getting out of bed, or whatever you did.
Frank, let's see.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your support.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, an initial question was that a vote of the Board of Selectmen? I kept hearing we, and you said.
No, it was not that I'm aware of.
Was it? Through the chair, may I? Is it too late? No
It
one's
is too late. We will discuss it next week, and I'll pose the question. So I'll make a note, and I will have the question answered. Okay, I have here a bill to be paid. I'm going to pass this down to, Kathy can do this. Kathy, would you make a motion, or?
Oh. I'd like to make a motion that the Finance Committee approve the bill in the amount of $736 for payment of postage for Spring 2022 Town Meeting Booklet, payable to the USPS.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the committee vote to approve the payment of $736 for postage for mailing of the the budget report for spring town meeting or annual town meeting. The funding source, Jody, what's the usual funding source? Do I have to specify?
You don't have to specify, it just comes from our account.
Thanks, Deirdre. Okay, discussion, none heard. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Okay, the vote is 9-0. Everybody needs to sign this.
Wow.
Very official, very official. Okay, I will take a motion on the minutes.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Garzon.
I move, that we approve, I'm going to do the minutes of March 30th
Oh, boy.
as written.
Thank you.
Is well written.
It's been moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we vote to approve the Finance Committee meeting minutes from March 30th as written. Any discussion? None heard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. And there should be no abstentions on the 30th. Okay? Thank you. And how about our minutes from the 23rd?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lohr.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from March 23rd.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Finance Committee vote to approve the minutes from our 23 March meeting as written. Any discussion? None heard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstaining.
She was not attacking, that's correct.
Says it right here, she was. Just joking. I looked and I totally breezed over it. All right, so there are 8 yeas, no nays, and 1 abstention, Deirdre. Okay. I believe we've done enough damage for tonight.
Oh, good, I move that we adjourn.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have to post the agenda for Monday, tomorrow.
I'll have inputs to you tomorrow. It will be fairly limited. It'll basically be discussion of the warrant with a few invited guests or answers on some of these questions that we took. So I'll contact you tomorrow, Deirdre. If we can connect via Zoom, we will, but I want all the committee members in person. And we do have a room, and we have coordinated recording of the meeting. It won't be televised, but it will be recorded. Okay? All right, so it's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?